What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Distilling 101 Questions and Answers. If you would give me just a few minutes to share some of these links. Same old song dance, got to share the links. So bear with me while I wait for it to come up on the other page that we're streaming to. And then I got to grab a link and share it. So bear with me. I hate at the beginning of the show has to kind of be quiet and a little bit of dead air there, and now of course it's going to be slow to come up. So bear with me. Let me get these posted. I don't know why people send me messages right when they know I'm about to go live. If you're listening, don't do that. Stop it. It pops up in every page that I have open to share, and it gives me the big circle of death, and I have to deal with all that. So bear with me just a second while I share these. So I hope everybody brought some questions with them. I'm still sharing these links, and I'll be for sure. Facebook will warn me in just a second that I've reached my max. They always do. Hopefully they'll let me get a few more in. We will see. So all these other pages are waiting to open. That might be a good thing. That might be a blessing in disguise. Actually, it's so I have to wait for some of these other pages to open. Maybe I'll slow me posting these down. We shall see. Bear with me. I know it's just it takes a little time. Because then I'll post and then they'll tell me I can't anymore, and that'll be it. So bear with me just a second. Yep, I knew that was coming. So that's it for the day. Again, I'll say I'm going to contact Facebook about that and go another week without getting up with them because I'm so busy. So just give me a few more minutes here. And all right. All right, now let me go through the list. What's going on, Kimbo? Except work hard, play hard. What's going on, Richard? Patrick? What's up, Jason? Awesome. That sounds great, brother. I look forward to hearing more about it as it goes, man. Yeah, that sounds awesome. What's going on, Curtis? What's up, brother? Mr. Dance? Howdy, ha ha. Howdy, ha ha. Howdy, ha ha. What's going on, Michael? All right, we got a question. How do they make corn syrup? Well, it's basically just refined down. I don't know if I've ever seen the How It's Made. I love that old TV show that used to be on How It's Made. But I'm guessing they basically just break it down into cook it, gelatinize it, and then extract the sugars from it, much like we do. Um, Good question. We'll check that one out in just a minute. Started distilling, had a few questions. Awesome, Michael. Jump right on in there with your questions, brother. What's going on, Brian? Going to do your first corn whiskey run. And it is in the secondary fermentation now. Awesome. So you've already gotten past your first stages, and um, yeah, generally, now secondary fermentation. You mean you've racked off the liquids into another vessel, or the cap's dropped and it's just waiting to be run, or I want to make sure that I'm following you just right. My favorite to make lately it's brandies, brother. I've been getting into a lot of brandies the last few years, but you know, my favorite thing to drink, of course, is whiskeys and bourbons. So I have to say that's my favorite to drink. But I'm enjoying making wines and Jason. On this, we just generally do the questions and answers. We don't bring a lot of people on a lot of times. I may in the future have some guests on to help with the Q&A, or some master distillers, or real life and on the TV show, and other people like that. Generally, I just try to keep it a one man pony show, and answer the questions as I can. And you can make it from sugarcane. Absolutely, brother. Do I have any recipes that I hate or never run again? I will say that until I educated myself, I really wasn't fond of the bird watcher recipe because of them just using tomato paste as the nutrient, and shitloads of yeast, and I just, based on reading it, I was like, I can't imagine that being good. And I told everybody, for a long time that, because basically what I've read is it's not a good nutrient. And that primary reason is because the tomato paste. is because it doesn't contain the yan and the fan. What I didn't read on into it is, but at the same time, it does contain some minerals and vitamins uh, that are beneficial. So it's not maybe as bad as I once professed. It does contain calcium and vitamins and other minerals and things that are actually, beneficial for the fermentation, omega-3 fatty acids. There's a lot of things that it does have. So it's not all bad like I used to believe that it's just useless waste of time. But I'm not so sure what kind of flavor it gives, like in a brandy, if you want to use it for a nutrient. A brandy, I guess, in a neutral that you want to run, in a column that you're going to get rid of a lot of flavors, or like we spoke before, if you're making a vodka that you're going to use for Bloody Marys, I doubt that a lot of the tomato flavor would carry forward. But I will say I gave I gave tomatoes a bad shakedown first before I realized that there are actually some beneficial things in there. Problem being is a lot of people think when they add it, they've added everything that they've needed, and they've really not added the main thing that is needed, which is the yan and fan. So that was probably one of the recipes that I hated the most, simply because they used that as what they said was a nutrient. After doing a little more research and finding out, I guess most of the nutrients in that comes from dying yeast and yeast cannibalizing other yeast, looking for yan and fan because they're not getting it from the tomatoes. And as the yeast die, they're getting cannibalized, and that's how they're getting their yan and fan. So probably not the best circumstance and the best way for the yeast to get it. It's great to use dead yeast as a nutrient, but you don't want them killing each other to get it. It's best just to boil it, let it cool, throw it in, and let them eat the dead yeast instead of being starved for yin and fan to the point where they're killing each other to get it. So that would probably be the best. Have you ever tried the omega yeast? Oh, I'm glad you asked that, brother. No, I have not. I've seen it advertised. I know it's like a liquid yeast that comes, and there's a lot of different varieties of it. Looks very interesting, but to be honest, I've never tried it. Um, Hopefully, we can get some people on here, maybe some people on here that have tried it. But we'll get the word out on it and get maybe some opinions on it. Yeah, supposed to get up to 10%, which is what I thought it was interesting. I did look at it, and looks like 1.060 is about the max that you want to get your starting gravity up to, and that's as far as it'll go. That can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what you want. Actually, it can be a really good thing if you want to, say, maintain some sweetness. So maybe you're going to take it, start at a 1080 and allow this to take it to 1060 and die. Probably not the best way for your yeast to die. Um, may cause some off flavors, um, but you will retain some sweetness. So, like if you were wanting to, say, make a sweet wine or have something that you wanted to distill that had a little sweetness retained, you can either start early, or you could use this stuff and have it finished as far as it can go, and then just go forward with it from that. So in that case, it could be good. I find it interesting that it comes, in a liquid already, I guess. So maybe a starter probably wouldn't be necessary. I'm not sure longevity wise how beneficial that may be. I know it comes from, I think it's from like Sweden or Switzerland or somewhere. Um, but I haven't personally used it, so I can't say. Um, Banana esters, that's great. There's some really good, interesting flavors in banana. I've done some banana. Um, you get some interesting esters and flavors with banana, just a sole banana. You can get some darkness, some kind of earthy grunge to it that I like, but alone wasn't really good. And So I thought and thought, and I thought, well, maybe if I do, like Nick Calo, maybe mix it with a little powdered peanut butter, and if that would be good, if I just infused some powdered peanut butter and reran it with that powdered peanut butter in the infuser. And everybody, I went and got a thing of the powdered peanut butter, and everybody's telling me you got to be really careful with that because it can get bitter, and I've never worked with it before, and this was a good rum. Don't get me wrong, it's a good rum, and it's a dark flavor that's good. It's just it needed something, and so I started experimenting around a little bit, and I came up with well, I was wanting to do a root beer. So I got the idea, that darkness from this rum combined with root beer, damn, that'd probably be pretty good because root beer has that, that flavor about it. And I will say that the combination of the two is really good. So it gives that root beer shine, a lot of depth, a lot of, um, earthy grunginess, and I love it. It's really, really good. So y'all have to come to one of these festivals. I take it with me, and everybody can have a little swig of it, and let me know what they think about it. But good question. I'm glad you brought it forward here. Um, it was one that was asked in the group chat, probably about 15-20 minutes ago. And I was right in the middle of setting up to start the show, so I couldn't answer it. But I asked that they bring it forward. I'm really glad that we did. And good question, and bring more of these good questions. I like them. But we will get into that in a minute. Actually, we can pull it up once things quieten down and some of these other questions are answered. I intend on learning more about it. And we'll open it up and we'll look and we'll see more about it, and we'll find out exactly where it's made, whether it's Switzerland, Sweden. I know it's somewhere like that. Um, but we'll definitely find out some more. I do know that I've noticed they've got some Quebec yeast, which I'm a big fan of. So we'll see what all they have. Brian Gregg, have I done an orange brandy? No, sir, I have not. But it sounds interesting, and yes, you can do citrus fruits. Just watch your pH, and make sure that you've got, with the starting gravity, make sure you got the right amount of sugars. I definitely recommend using, of course, the oyster shells, and of course, with anything like this, you definitely want to use some, nutrients, good nutrients, and everything. So, but it would be interesting to do. I've not done it, but it definitely sounds interesting. As a fruit brandy, definitely would be something interesting to try. Is anybody else out there? So if any of you other guys have tried it, hop in there and let us know what your results were, because this is a learning experience for everybody. So everybody here is helping each other. We're learning together. So what's going on, Colton? Love you up here in Alberta, brother. I hear y'all have some elections coming up, man. Get out and vote up there. I'm not going to get political, but definitely get out and vote up there. And I'm not going to say I don't want you as a 53rd state or 51st state, but I love Canada. But I do want things to get right in both our countries. What's going on, Mitch? Hey, Mr. Lopez, how you going, brother? What happened to the home distiller website? Oh, are they down? I haven't been there in a while. I used to go there all the time. I actually, years and years ago, GeoCities. If you want to go way back, I used to do the news groups. Back when the internet first got started, I used to do the news group thing, and then I think it went to like GeoCities. There was like little sites that GeoCities had for different things, and then I think after that I started going to home distillers. So I've been going there for a long time, but I don't frequently go there as much as I used to. I, it's great because you can type in a question or a topic, and you can narrow it down to a quick answer. A lot of times, that's one thing I really love about that we can't do on Facebook. So much. I'm working on that, but a lot of times you get a lot of people in there answering that don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So, but they usually get piled on pretty well in there by a bunch. So, that's the good thing about it. But I didn't know it was down. I will check it in a little bit here, and we can see if we can get there or not. You ever taken dandelion wine and turned it into shine? And banana is great. I don't have a single drop of that left. Yeah, banana is good, man. It makes a really good brandy. And no to the dandelion, and no to honeysuckle and redbud. There's so many floral wines and stuff that's been brought. We've been talking about that, I guess, for the last 6 to 8 months a lot. And well, I guess last year we talked a lot about it too. Mimosa trees. There's a lot of different flowering trees and flowers that would make for an interesting distillate. I'm not sure how well a lot of these floral notes will carry forward. Um, and sometimes I think, like a lot of my brandies, probably better off as a daggone wine than it would be a shine. I hate saying that, but sometimes things are just best left at the wine stage. And some of these florals may be part of that. I'm sure somebody has turned some of them into some outstanding products. I know. Well, this isn't exactly the flower, but I know Alan Bishop does with the sunflower seeds. As a sunflower, actually the seeds makes a shine with those sunshine, his sunshine. But actually, the florals. I've tasted some of the wines in the past. It's an old timey thing making the floral wines, and I've tried some of those in the past, but I've never distilled anything floral like that. Not that I won't, and not that I'm not going to. It's just like honeysuckle. Who's gonna sit there and pick and that one little drop? It is. Hopefully, I can find some honeysuckle extract somewhere because I don't see me doing that. And some of those flowers and stuff are kind of bitter. So, all right, brother, hurry back. What's going on, Scott? Yes, it is, man. It's great. It's a great place to come in and talk shine and talk distilling and share your experiences and your triumphs and your defeats. So what's worked out well for you wasn't hasn't. Nothing like getting a group of people together and sharing some of their experiences and maybe going over some of those and finding out what could have gone wrong, what may have gone wrong. You're welcome, brother. Glad you're in here. Finished 4 runs of Jimmy Red and Red Apples. All 4 turned out great. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I remember hearing y'all talk about these. Now is the first time that I have an empty fermenter since October. Well, man, you better hurry up and get something in there. You're going to have to break that still down and wash it, man. That's the best way to. People ask me, what's the best way to wash a still? And I say, keep it full of mash and running. You don't have to clean it. Just rinse it out and keep going. What's going on, brother? Glad you're with us tonight. Yes, I have. I've used the staves, and I haven't bought spirals, but I've used like the smoking chips that are basically just wood shards um, that I've charred myself. I prefer the staves. Um, they're a lot easier to use and deal with. Um, I've seen a lot of people use the Jack Daniels from the bag, basically ground up, chipped up wood staves from barrel staves from their. So I would say you could use those just fine. I like the staves. They go in solid. They come out solid. I don't have a lot of little stuff to strain. Sometimes there, of course, always something that's going to come off that and I just run it through, like a coffee filter, to get everything out. But when I did the smaller stuff, I was getting a lot of like sawdust and small particles and a lot of fine stuff in there that I don't like having in there. So the staves pretty much, or spirals, I guess those would work real well too. But I've never really wanted to spend the kind of money on those. I've got staves that work really well. Um, I used to have my own. I've got firewood out there that I used to cut myself, and it's seasoned. I've got some white oak, and I used to use that ages ago. That was my go-to thing, is just using the firewood. And I noticed that I was getting a rainbow colored film on the surface of my distillates and stuff, and I'd sit out dripping, and I'd see that rainbow, and it's something I'd never seen. And I was like, what the hell? And I was actually putting these in jars that I was dripping into, and starting it out that way from the very beginning. And it ended up being the ends of the wood where they were cut with a chainsaw and had the bar and chain lube. And I finally figured it out. It took me a long time to figure out what the hell it was, but so I started cutting off the ends of the firewood that had the chainsaw, straight chainsaw cut, and that eliminated that problem. So it was just that little bit of oil, bar oil, that was getting in there, but it was causing a little uh, rainbow film on the top. I guess it was just oils. But hard lesson learned. But now I use staves. My neighbor has a little business on the side business. He makes a lot of little project things with barrel staves. It's a big thing here in Kentucky. A lot of people like little, like barrel bars, barrel seats, plaques on the walls made with the staves, and he does a lot of different crafts and stuff with it. So he saves me all his little small short pieces that could go in a jar, and I clean those up real well. I'll sand the gray side down and char it as well, and I char it all the way around and get it good and charred, and I'll throw those in, and I'll throw them in a jar as it's coming off. Sometimes I'll throw some staves in there in a strainer, one of those metal mesh strainers, and just let the distillate drip through some of these staves and help take some of the fuse oils out. But yeah, it's definitely adds a lot of flavor, and it's something I can't stress enough. So if you love whiskeys, you love that smoky flavor, absolutely, um, do it, because I think last week we were talking about how the barrel and the aging process can add 60 to 80% of the flavor of the final distillate, and it does. It makes a huge impact on the final product. I mean, it goes from basically just a white dog to a finished mature liquor that's ready to drink, and it's just different. It's a different drink, and a lot of people don't like the white lightning, the white dog, or moonshine. It's not as refined. It doesn't have a lot of these flavors. I like it, especially like corn liquor and other brandies and stuff that bring a lot of the grain and bring a lot of the flavor of the fruit and everything forward. But yeah, you get a good multi-grain and put it on some oak and let it age a while. And I'm a whiskey bourbon lover, so yeah, man, it really makes the product, takes it to the next level. Really, it does. Well, I have to check it out, man. Until then, we're going to start adding some more recipes to the militia page and to the Distilling 101 page. I'm trying to. What the problem is, a lot of these files over the years have been saved as PDF, and I'll just pull up a random one here in my PDF, and let's see, it'll be Well, a lot of these are getting renamed, so uh, but it won't be a descript name. It'll just be numbers like P111946. It doesn't really describe what it is. So I'm going to go through each one. I'm going to clean them up, uh, take a lot of the fake. What's happened to a lot of these files over the years? People have taken them and they've added their watermark to them, or they've copied and pasted and added their names to it and done a lot of other things. So um, when someone takes credit for it, I guess I'm going to leave their name in there. I'm not sure if it was their original file, but I'm not going to take it out and act like it's mine. I may just eliminate everything and just create just a generic list. There are a lot of really good um, recipes. I like making my own. It's using the hydrometer. Really, a lot of people, how much of this fruit should I use? And it's like you can use 100% fruit juice. Just check that hydrometer, and if you're getting where you want to be with just the fruit, that's the best way. But fruit's expensive, so if you want to get to that 1070 or 1080 or whatever, and add some sugar to get there, then you need that hydrometer, and that's when the recipe comes in. But generally speaking, I know ratios like we've got some grain bills out there for people that want to try to mimic some of the distilleries out there in Distilling 10 or in Distilling 101 and in the militia page. I did upload that. So it shows basically the ratios of different grains, and that would give you a really good idea, of what percentage of corn, wheat, barley, oats, rye, whatever that you're going to be using. So you can try your different ratios and see what you get by trying different ones. But recipe wise, it's unless you're doing like an absinthe or a gin where there's a lot of complex ingredients, keep it simple. Just and definitely keep a log. I think that's one of the things that if I could stress the most is keep a log of everything you do. That when you have your successes that we're talking about, you can write it down. And next time, if it comes up a little bit short in one department, you know, we know where we can go back and start developing it better. Reason being, a lot of these recipes and everything, it's just an opinion. It's, if somebody says, "Oh, this is the best recipe," somebody else tries it, it's like, shit, that's the worst. It's mine's better. And always, there's better out there. So, it's just a lot of times developing your own, because it's, everybody's unique. Their tastes are unique. What they like is different than what others may like. So one man's trash is another man's, top shelf. So, um, but practice on making good cuts and give your, distillate the chance to shine, and and don't hide your flavors with acetone and things that are carrying forward, take care, in the distilling process, and try to eliminate all of those you can. Yes, sir. Yeah, I like the staves as well, barrel staves. Yes, sir. On the outside where the graying is, if you have a planer, you could run it over a planer a few times and plane it down flat, hit it with a torch, just your old regular old propane torch, and blacken it good and get a good char on it, and just drop it in water, put it out, and then you can throw it in the jars, and it's ready to go. Or you can break it up, char it, and put it, like I say, in a strainer. And as your distillate comes off, you can, kind of filter it through that. And some people do, some people don't do that. It really depends on what you're running and what you're doing and what the end product's going to be. For like a moonshine or white dog, I highly recommend doing it. If it's something that's you're going to age, it's probably less critical, because a lot of those oils will, maybe estrify into something better. But um, a lot of people will do it on their tails only. So when they start getting to their tails, when they start getting into a lot of the fused oils, and they know, high oil content coming on, that's when they'll move that charcoal over and start, filtering the fusel oils out of the tails, and then when they run it again, you won't have as many oils to deal with in your next, in your next run. Yeah, yeah, just use staves, and you get a little, get a little flavor from the last thing that was in there too sometimes. So that's not always a bad thing either. So sometimes it's better to pick a pretty good, you know, liquor that you love. I'm not sure how much flavor carries forward, but I'm sure some does. But I really like the staves. They seem to work well. You can also, if you want to, drill some holes through it and char it, and that way you're getting your distillate into the pores again, deeper into the barrel than they may have been able to get before, more likely. So you're getting some more, penetration into the wood, and getting some, tannins, and maybe some flavors, and vanillas and caramels and all these other things out of the wood that may have been used up. A lot of the barrel makers will use it first time as, for bourbon, and then some will use it again for a whiskey, and then a lot of times you'll have beer makers buy it, and they'll age their beer in it just a little bit to give it that whiskey beer, that Boilermaker flavor. And so I do tend to stay away from the ones that the beer makers use. They tend to sour pretty quickly, and I don't think they carry quite the flavor forward. A lot of winemakers do like ports and stuff, and sherries, and things like that they use the barrels for, to, kind of give a unique flavor to their wine, port or sherry. And so, you can maybe for like brandies, those would be good, but for like my whiskeys, I tend to try to get a once used bourbon barrel if possible. If not, I try to get that whiskey barrel. Tall's mace jar, but bought from STC. Oh, staves. Yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah, and you can get them around. They're pretty cheap, especially the staves, because there's a lot of barrels that get broken and busted, and they're basically not worth even making a planter out of at that point. And you see a lot of people selling them as planters, put out in the yards and stuff. So, it's a lot of those, the beer ones too. But if you can, hey, Phil Greeks, what's up? But if you can, yeah, get a whiskey or a bourbon one, and yourself. And if you can find a barrel, great, use it to age in. I know a lot of times it's 53s, and it take a lot of time and shine to fill those. You really can't fill them up as you go. I know Stale Cracker did that. He had the best little plan. I don't know if you guys know this guy. He's on Facebook, and he's a Cajun cook. I think the guy used to be a state cop, and he got tired of that, and he wanted to become a digital, guy creator. And so he started this little channel on Stale Cracker. He has a crawdad farms down there in Louisiana, and I don't know if y'all seen him. He's a character. He's funny as shit. And but he's decided to have people send him back, bottles of their favorite liquor, and man, I mean, people are sending this guy Pappy. I mean, they're taking Pappy and dumping it in the barrel. He's getting all these different, some really good, um, he rare everything. I mean, this dude's getting some top shelf stuff getting sent to him, and he's taking a few drinks of it, takes a shot, and then I think maybe there's a few that he's like, nah, I think I'm gonna keep this, and I think maybe the Pappy he might have pulled that one out. I can't remember that episode, but so he started filling up this 53-gallon barrel, and he had this little fishing pole, and he was lowering down his shot glass, and he'd reel it up, pull his shot glass out, and he was tasting it as it blended with all the others in his barrel. I can't think, man, that is the best idea. I might start that. I might copy his idea, man. So, everybody send your moonshine in, or your favorite liquor bottle, and we'll dump it in a barrel. And when we get it full, we'll see what we have. That could be something fun to do. But yeah, man, brilliant idea. I definitely have to copy that one. So if you got a shine and you're extra proud of it, we may save it for me, because we may we may start something like that, man. I think Old Stale Cracker was onto something. I like the way that guy thinks, man. But yeah, if you can get some barrel staves, that's definitely the way to go with it. STC, is that some kind of shopping home network? Some kind of shopping? What do we talk? STC. Still in the clear. Oh yeah, Cyrus. Should have known that acronym. I'm not real good with those. What's the easiest fruit to ferment? I don't know about the easiest, but one that carries forward real well. Let's give Osiris a plug here, man. Great guy, very knowledgeable. Love watching the show. I'd love to be able to do the living off the grid thing and adding that to my show, but getting a bit old for that. The easiest fruit to ferment. I don't know the easiest. They're all probably pretty, well, of course, banana, that gets some huge caps. So anybody that's wanting to do banana, definitely want to watch the cap size because they get massive, man. They get really, really big. They get massive. So definitely, if you're doing one of those, watch out because they are going to create a really, really big cap, and they have been known to make many messes, create many issues with fiancés and wives, and it's been the end of many men's distilling and beer making careers. So, um, yeah, be definitely careful. But I would say peach, probably. Peaches and apples are two of the easier ones. Um, they're just so plentiful and inexpensive. Um, most fruit you get into a lot of expense. If you've got fruit trees, um, that's awesome. If you've got land, make your own orchard, plant your own trees out there, maintain them best you can, and and do all that you can. The weirdest mash I've made. I talked about this not too long ago. The strangest thing that I ever tried to do, I had Ann and I we do some canning and we make our own jams and jellies and marinaras and sauces and what's the spicy dip? Hey, what's the what's the what did we dip our chips in? The salsa. Damn, I don't know what salsa. I have trouble coming up with salsa. I'm getting old, but she makes awesome salsa. So we tend to create a lot of our a lot of our own stuff like that, and we do soups, a lot of soups, and do meat and everything. So we got a little overzealous, I guess. We got a little excited, and I guess you'd say we made way too many jams and jellies a few years ago. We got all hog wild, and man, I had almost a refrigerator full of. I know you don't have to store it there, but I put it on the fridge, and it about almost had 3/4 refrigerator full of jams and jellies, and it left me enough room at the bottom for my beverages. And it was a lot. It was really good though. We had a lot of blueberry syrup and blueberry jam and strawberry jam and lots of different grapes and blackberry, just all kinds of different. And so over the years, we ate them as we could. We don't do as many breakfasts and biscuits and all that as we used to, and so we're just not using as much jams and jellies as we get older. And Ann has diabetes now, so that got even more back on it. So I decided that I was going to just mash that shit in, right? Just Put all in there and add some, hot water, stir it up good, and throw a little nutrient in there and some yeast and see what happens. So I did, and a little pectin enzyme too to eat some of that pectin out. And we were going on. I can't remember where we went that weekend. We went somewhere out of town that weekend, so it had a good 3 or 4 days to go. Before I saw it again, and I didn't have a chance to really push the cap down and keep it moist and keep the alcohol content up in the mash like I like to do. And it was inside. And it was cooler though. It was cold out, so I had to do it inside. And it was in one of my big tall drums, so it wasn't bad. But we had quite a lot. And I really needed the jars too, so it was time. And they were not bad to where they had mold on them, but they just didn't taste good anymore. So I dump them all in there to keyed up, put some water in on it, and, throw a little bit of nutrients in there, a little pectic enzymes, and next day I throw some yeast in it, and we take off. We came home 4 days later. That mash had like grass, mold, mildew. I think about every bacteria known to man was growing in there. I think I had penicillin. I think I had things that penicillin kills. I mean, it was colorful. It was scary as hell. It's the only mash that I've ever just thrown away because of the way it looked, and it wasn't like that. It was. I mean, there was some grassy, there was some mold, there was some mildew, there was some reds and greens, and when I opened it up, I got hit with spore, odors, and there were some things in there that were kicking off spores and stuff. It was without a doubt the absolute worst. And I dragged that barrel out behind my house and dumped it in the woods behind the house. And I feel sorry for any coon or animal that came along and ate it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a possum got it. But yeah, it was probably the worst, weirdest, and the worst. I remember Shua did the same thing a few years ago, and I was kind of skeptical then, and I wasn't sure how it'd work out. So I asked him about it, and he said, "Oh, it's working off good. It's working off good." And I asked him later how'd that turn out, and he never replied to me. So I'm assuming that one, it was one of those that didn't work out well for him either. But not saying it won't work, and I'm pretty sure I've seen people do it and have success with it. I think if I'd have been up home and able to get that pressed in and keep the alcohol, on the surface, it would have probably killed a lot of that off. And that's one of the main reasons that I tell people to do it. And we should do it. But yeah, I was definitely afraid. And I hope you're not talking about what I just talked about, Dave. There's no way I station that stuff, man. Those spores just, I mean, hit my nose. I was like, oh man, I was digging at my nose trying to clean it. Yeah, no, never again. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, actually, that's the chips I used before, but I'd char them more. But it had a lot of fines in it. That was my biggest complaint about it too. It was the fine stuff in it and the sawdust and the dust, and so you had to kind of sieve it out and clean it and use that. And you still got a little bit in it. I guess you could have rinsed it well, but wasn't that patient at the time. But now staves is definitely my go-to. Or barrels. I've got these, Bad Mo's and Wesley's Sandman barrels. Uh, they're great. But again, those require the full length, full turn. If you're impatient and you want quicker, you can get the smaller barrels, but they're not going to give you that big barrel taste over, a short period. But, like a gallon or 2 gallon or 2.5 gallon wood barrels, those do fine, and they don't take long at all. A lot of surface area to alcohol ratio there. So, they're great for short term, but does it compare to a big barrel? No, it doesn't, because again, time, with the smaller barrels, you're not really getting a lot of the maturation of the spirit itself. You're not getting a lot of the esterification of some of those oils and stuff and the processes that take place on a short period like that. So, but that they're great. They do make it taste better. It will improve your distillate, and it will definitely, it does well. I've got 115. I'm getting ready to soak up and start filling up. And I've got Phil Billy's got another one for me that I'm gonna pick up next time I'm up there. And I think a 15, is about the right size. It's not going to take 4 years, like a big barrel will. So, but I think in a 15, a couple of years in a 15, I think will be pretty good. So I'm going to do some longer term aging with those and still use my staves for stuff that I want quicker. All right. Rich has got him some of the yellow label. Awesome, brother. I would say grind it up a little bit, crack it, cracked ice, or, run it through your grinder. Just break it up a little bit. Maybe, I'm not sure if it's even required. Um, but I would have to, break it up a little bit. So run it through your grinder or, grain mill or coffee grinder, food processor, blender, whatever you got, and break it up a little bit. Um, I'm sure if you had like a rice powder, that's going to be take a little longer to settle out, and it's going to be cloudy. Um, but I think that you'll probably get all the starches when you do it that way. Um, yeah, it's I'd definitely try to crack them, and I'm sure there's some sake maker out there that's pulling his hair out and saying, "No, you don't have to do that at all, man. Just do it like they are. It's just fine. I've never had issues." So, you know, um, but myself personally, I break them up a little bit. That's what I intend to do. But I'm going to do the same thing. I've got some yellow label. I'm going to try it on some rice, and I'm going to try it on some grain that's not been gelatinized. So that's going to be fun. What's going on, Jeff? Good to have you with us, brother. But it might be, you know, Kimbo's got a point. Once you put that hot water on it, because I mean, definitely you got to cook it and try to gelatinize it, just like you do any other. Um, yeah, the image here. Any other. Let's see. Okay, so here we're going to see rice, short grain rice. So here's your saccharification range. So it's pretty small, but you can see short grain and long grain have different cooking temperatures. So yeah, you're going to want to cook it at this temperature right here for 60 minutes, say, and help break out those starches. Now, once it's cooked, I think you could probably get in there with your drill and and you're going to have to add amylase. Well, he's not, because he's using it, but I should walk this back. Because he's using the yellow label, we're not going to treat it like we normally would. So technically, he probably doesn't even have to do anything to the rice. He could probably just throw it in there, and this stuff will just do it all. That's what I'm guessing. That's what I've heard from it, But I'm on the mindset back to how I treat rice normally, which I still may do. I'm definitely thinking about cooking it maybe and releasing starches and maybe hitting it with the drill and the little mud mixer that it chops up fruits and stuff too, and maybe bust up some of the rice and just give it hell that way to oxygenate it. And but yeah, I guess if you're using the yellow label, I guess you could just pour it in some 90-degree water and just throw the yellow label in there and put a lid on it. I mean, experiment. Try it both ways. Try some. Have a control. Do your control like you would a normal science experiment. Do the try to cook some and use the yellow label. Try to put some in at 90 and do it that way and see what kind of difference that you get. And see you know but it's going to be interesting. But yeah, in this case, you definitely would want to find a recipe to find out how many pounds of rice that you're going to need. So let me look through some of my recipes here real quickly that might have it named properly. Hopefully, I've got so many files in here. Okay. A rice alcohol versus sake. It's very short. Sake, Japanese rice wine. This wine is not distilled, so it's slower. Soshu is what gets distilled. So this really doesn't give me any ratios. It's not really a recipe. It's just trying to figure out how many. This is kilograms. It's using sugar as well. Yeah, they're calling to boil, but they're not using the yellow label. But we will find a good ratio. Let's see. We will definitely find a good ratio for that. Let me. So we're looking at pounds of rice to make a sake, because basically when you do this, you're making a wine that you distill. So the sake is the wine. 61 to make roughly 61 ounces of sake, you'll need 3 pounds of rice. I love that. So that's probably 6 pounds per gallon, I'm guessing. 6 pounds per gallon according to that. Now let me look here. Let me remove this file and let's see if I can add. Let's see if one of my yeah, I don't have anything. That's all just fruits that talk about amounts there. So I'd say, probably try maybe 5 pounds per gallon. Let's just start with that and see where it takes us. I'm not seeing any definitive answer here. It says 50%. That's 2.38 liters of sake is made from 1 kilogram of polished rice. Okay, so 1 kilogram of polished rice for 2.38 liters of sake. So that's half a gallon. So that's a kilogram per half gallon. And that's 2.2 pounds. So that's about 4.4. So that's close. Let's try 5. Let's just go 5 pounds. Sounds like a reasonable starting point. Let's try it. 5 pounds. That's what I'm going to do as well. 5 pounds of sugar. 5 pounds of polished rice in water with the yellow label, and then cooked and then add the yellow label. I remember it. Remind me, Richard, when it's my turn to do this, and I will be before too long, I'm going to go 5. Yeah, they're too proud of them, Richard. I mean, you can, especially for furniture grade barrels, which are so dry or been used so many times, or been used by beer, or winemakers have been used 4 times. Pretty much used up. Um, yeah, and even the planters that they chop in half. It's like, you want how much for that? It's like, I mean, I look in Facebook marketplace, and I'm seeing tons of places that are what's what that meant. There's tons of places that have them though for like 45 to 85 bucks, and decent looking ones. So, but I guess if you want that fancy barrel head on there that's got a certain um, top premium name emblazoned on it, um, yeah, you probably pay a premium for something like that. But yeah, they're crazy what they want for some of these. I like the idea of having a little turntable on there as well. But yeah, they're definitely way out of the ballpark. My neighbor does a lot of that, and he does a lot of the wall plaques. He's got like a little template in a lot of the different states. He'll draw it out, and he's got his little saw, and he'll cut it. I'm trying to get him to do the CNC thing, but he's not got there yet. But yeah, hurry back, brother. Wow, Diablo's an interesting character. I guess he thinks men with beards are pedos or something. That's pretty strange, man. Do I know the story of the frog? I'm probably going to be sorry if I ask, as long as it doesn't violate the terms of YouTube or Facebook. Let's see. I'm just not kissing any frogs. That's all I got to say. Awesome. Yeah, I like making my own recipes. It's basically a lot of them are bullshit, or just been, just the same ones rehashed over and over and over, copied and pasted. So, man, I'm getting some interesting questions out of YouTube. Body count, man. I swear to God, I've never killed anybody, man. uh, unflavored LaCroix. Um, I'm I'm at a loss. I don't do the sparkling water, so I had to Google it to tell you. I do have some up there in my refrigerator. They were from my sister's house, and she used to drink a lot of these. And she passed away, so I thought I hate throwing a bunch of cans of sparkling waters out. But hers went LaCroix. I've never tried them, brother. I'm not a real big fan, but I can see me drinking these before I would like just a plain water. Water's just so fucking boring. And I think these would make some pretty interesting mixed drinks as well. Um, I have a beautiful fiance, brother, and I'm not a pedo. Oh, it's funny. What's up, beef? Hell yeah, man. Get her done, brother. No, that's pretty much. I'm glad you asked. That's been pretty much debunked over time. There's, I think, like the reefer madness from back in the 30s, where they tried to scare everybody away from using marijuana. I think they did pretty much the same things with the alcohol. It'll blind you, make you go, crazy and lose your vision and hearing and reduce mental capacities. Maybe to reduce mental capacities. Maybe that's what's happening to me. But I call it just getting old. But um, there is some truth to methanol. That is the first thing to come off in higher percentage ratio wise. When we're running just in pot still mode, it's one of the first things to come off, and of course we call that a force shot, and that's a methanol. I think that there's probably been more people killed with methanol, which from the government, just to put it bluntly. A lot of products, of course, everybody knows that alcohol is taxed, and the reason they allow you to make beer and wine at home is because it really doesn't have much alcohol in it. But liquor, is high percentage of alcohols. They want that tax money, so that's a lot higher tax dollar, and a lot more concern when it comes to taxes, which is, I'm not. It's fine. I'm not happy with the taxes, but that's why. Um, but when alcohol is denatured, there's certain ways of denaturing alcohol that the government forced people to do in certain products and stuff to prevent people from drinking it, getting a cheap alcohol. Can't have that. So in the denaturing process, a lot of times methanol is something that's added back. And I would say there's been more people probably go blind and have issues with trying to find a way to drink and distill denatured alcohol and make it drinkable than moonshine ever. The biggest issue in the past with moonshine a lot was what it was used to distill and to condense. A lot of times they used carbon steel oil drums that had oils in them and shit, and they get rusty over time, and you got all this oil and shit coming off in your distillate, and then all of a sudden you clean all the oil off, and then it starts rusting because all the oil's gone. So starts letting pieces of rust and iron oxide off into your distillate, and metal ions in there, and that's not good. And then people are using car radiators for condensers, and that's definitely not good. And especially, you know, when they use lead to patch them and repair them before they use them, and a lot of lead and other things. So I would say lead and things of that nature, metal ions, back in the old days, should have been where the greatest concern was. But you would have to really concentrate your foreshots and your heads, uh, and keep running them over and over and over again and concentrating them to get to the parts per million, and just drink those along with nothing else in order to get to the point where you would go blind or deaf or have neurological issues. So, but I would say as many or more people were harmed from the denaturing of alcohol than anything. But good question. And, as long as we do proper cuts, that's not something that we worry about so much. And that's why we're here, to make it a safe hobby. So good question. That's funny. So I'm glad you're keeping logs though. Man, y'all crack me up, man. That's funny shit. Uh, yeah, share those logs, man. Not those logs, the other logs, the ones you keep tracking. That's funny, brother. I am a little bit behind, so I'm gonna try to get caught up. Um, yeah, that's what I do, brother, in the off season, man. I mean, man, Jose's got to do something, man, to keep everybody, keep all those elves happy and working. What would I mean? I'm afraid to even touch. I don't even want to get into those kind of, yeah. Phil Elmore. Is that a master distiller? I've not read any of his stuff, but it looks like an interesting dude. Mark. Yeah, it sounds like he's got some interesting stuff, man. I've never read his work though. Has he got good, what books do you like of him? Colin? No, I'm not Brian. I don't know. I could have some, I could have some kids out there that I don't know about, but I don't think Brian Johnson's probably one of them. Lou, I don't. I try not to get political in here, and definitely don't do any kind of speech on that. We try to keep it. We try to keep it professional. Try to keep everything on topic. Uh, and again, on the LaCroix, I would love to try some of those. They look interesting. Popcorn Sutton definitely was a character. Definitely helped create interest in the industry again. So yeah, he's a great guy. During his days, he was quite the character. What's going on, Roy? Good to have you, brother. Yeah, it's tips on making cuts. Yeah, generally speaking, it's you got to trust your nose and your taste. When you first get started, generally what you want to look at from the very beginning to the very end, and that's if you take your tails out, is the first 30% are going to be. Now, this is don't everybody's going to immediately jump me when I say this, but this isn't textbook exact, but a generalization for those that are trying to learn to separate their jars and break jars down. So your first 30% are going to be here. Your next 40% will be in the middle, and then your final 30% will be at the end. And what you want to do is each jar that comes out, you start from the very get go. Jar number one, label them. Number one, number two, number three. And as you go through it, as it's dripping down, you want to run your fingers into the distillate. You want to, feel it and smell it. And then wash your hands real good. Because that acetone, it once you start smelling it, and this is why you don't want to taste any of those first, and run it on out. So you've got everything separated into pint, quart jars. The larger your still, you can go to quart jars. But if you got a 10-gallon or less, get a bunch of pint jars. You're just gonna have to get you a bunch of pint jars and just label them 1 to 24, or ever how many far you go. So you label them all out, and then start in the middle, because in the middle is going to be where your hearts are, right? So start in the middle and then work towards your tails, and just taste a little sample, a little sample, a little sample. Okay, now I can smell this. I can see where they talk about maybe a little wet dog or musky smell. Yeah, let me smell. Oh yeah, the next one for sure. So maybe that one is high tails and got some hearts in it as well, and be a pretty good one to keep. But yeah, this is definitely getting musty over towards the tails. And taste the sip, and you can taste that mustiness. And sometimes you can, feel the oils in it. Put your fingers in it, feel the oils and stuff, and it gets a little oily on your fingers. Okay, so we've determined where the tails is. So, this one was a little bit taily, but that one's definitely musty, and I can see what they mean by the wet cardboard, wet dog, musty. You know, hard to describe, wet basement odor, whatever. So yeah, this is different, and I've got that. uh, but I had a flood in my basement not too long ago, a couple Saturdays ago. But so we're working through that. Yeah, so we've got it smells like tails down here right now. So go that direction first. Now, when you work back towards your heads, you can start in the middle again and smell, taste it, taste on your fingers. But when you start noticing a distinct difference, you'll smell that acetone. It's definitely a note. It's like your wife's fingernail polish remover without the perfume, if she gets the perfumey kind, or acetone if you're using it strip paint or whatever strip things with. The smell. Once you start smelling that, you know you've gotten into your heads. The reason I say don't drink it as it's coming off. Once you get those tails in your mouth, it's really hard to get that flavor out of your mouth. And even when you start getting the hearts, you're still tasting it, because it's on your tongue, and it's really hard to cleanse the palate to taste the next one. So just run your jars out. Don't be impatient. But as experience, as you learn, you're going to find that the first third was here, around 40% here, and it depends. Brandy's going to be a higher than 30, and maybe a 30-30-40. You never know, or a 40-30-30. Because brandies generally have a little more headsy. And then like a sugar shine or something like that, it's going to be very small. So it really depends on what you're doing. But learn to taste and learn the smell and the feel of it. And that way, when it's coming off, you'll be able to make that cut, and know this goes into that vat. I'm starting out now. I'm at high heads going into hearts. Yeah, that's well, I should say low heads going into the high hearts. And you'll know that that's about where I'm at there. This next jar, yeah, that's all that. So you can save that jar that has a little bit of heads in it, just enough to give it a little bit of acetone taste and smell, but not enough to ruin it. But set that aside, and I'll tell you in a minute. And then taste your hearts all the way down to your tails, and then once it gets musty, where it's like, I don't think I want any more of that. So then you got your hearts cut. Your tails, you can taste those all the way down. Especially if you're sour mashing, I highly recommend running it all the way down. A lot of people stop at 80 proof, and it's like, man, think about it. 75 proof. That's a good jar of alcohol, man. I mean, there's a lot of alcohol in 75 proof liquor, right? It just might not taste good because you got a lot of other stuff in there with it, but you can distill that out on the next run. So don't waste that. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see people making, and not just newbies making it. A lot of seasoned distillers, and some people, I just don't have the time for it, and that's fine. If you're wealthy and you're not really interested and you don't want to keep tails and rerun it, that's fine. That's awesome if you can afford to do that. But I mean, a lot of brandies and a lot of stuff that you spend a lot of money on, you can recover that ethanol, and it's good ethanol in those tails. So that last jar I was talking about, I'll talk about in a minute. Throw that in with those tails and save them. And you can later do what's called an all faints run, FEINTS, faints run. And that's just, heads and tails. Or you can load that in your thumper and get a lot more production on the next run. And those do great in the thumper, and you recover a lot of good ethanol. Ethanol has one flavor; it tastes like ethanol. So once you separate it from the acetones and your four shots and heads and into your hearts, but you can separate that from your tails and get hearts out of your tails. There's a lot of hearts in your tails, so what I'm trying to explain. So you can separate it from those oils in subsequent runs. I'm probably going along too much on that, but that's probably one of the most important topics in the beginning of distilling is knowing when to make cuts and why and how. And but save them, run that shit all the way down if you got time, especially. If not, you're really shorting yourself. You're wasting a lot of good product. So. Do you do third input? You mean like run it 3 times? Yeah, I've done triple runs, absolutely. And I've done it like I do it like a cognac a lot of times. I'll rerun it again in the same back set so I don't lose flavor. And instead of proofing it down with water to get it to below 80 for the second run, I'll just add some of the back set that has a lot of flavor in it, and I'll run it again with that back set, and I'll run it a third time. And that's one of the ways they do cognac, and that's one of the ways to do several cuts and keep that flavor, most importantly. So, good question. I think that's what you're asking me. If I'm not beef, clarify if I'm not answering that right. Buddy makes a damn tasty apple pie drink with straight moonshine. That shit'll get you lit. Oh yeah, Now, is he post flavoring it with some cinnamon and a little bit of sugar and spice? I hope, because that's some really good stuff, brother. Yeah, I like that apple pie. In fact, I got about 20 gallons of apple juice in there. I need to be putting to good use sometime soon. What's going on, Mr. Morgan? All right, brother. Keep stalling. His temps are around 90. His use things to get his pH up, and his pH keeps dropping. Well, I, I'm sorry I didn't get up with you, brother. Hell, I am way behind, man. I'm sorry, everybody. It's hard to answer the questions and get out there the answers that I want to get, but I'll get up with Mark. We talk all the time, so I'll get up with him on that later. Yeah, he sure did. That's right, brother. Oh, late to the show, brother. Better late than never. We got plenty of time. You might have missed a little bit. You might have to rewind and catch some answers. We've had some pretty good questions tonight. And I'm sorry I'm getting way behind as I do, but I do want to try to get the questions answered. Is I don't want to give somebody an abbreviated, short, quick answer and not talk about some of the other things that might be associated with the question. So sometimes I do get a little bit windy on my explanations, but I want to make sure people understand, instead of just giving them a straight cut and dry cold answer. I like to a lot of times explain why. So I do tend to get a little bit windy at times, but bear with me. What's the best corn to start with as a beginner? I want to buy a keg top still and start figuring out. Would love some advice. I would just recommend going to Tractor Supply if you don't have a grinder, which if you're just getting started, I'm going to assume that you don't have a grain mill. So I would just buy some cracked corn. Just go there and get you a big old bag of cracked corn and use about 3 pounds per gallon and cook it up to about. You're going to have to get some things now. You're going to have to buy some things. If you're not a member of the militia, Bailey, definitely need to join us. Alan Bailey. Had a good childhood friend named Alan Bailey. I don't think he's the same guy, but I don't know. I guess the other day or maybe it was last night on the shit show. We were talking about go karts. Everybody had a go kart. That was Alan Bailey. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of things you're going to need. But yeah, cracked corn would definitely be the best place to start. It's very, very inexpensive. Make sure mistakes inexpensive as well. So it's something that you're going to have to cook at about 190 plus for about an hour and a half. So you're going to do 190 for 90, 190 plus for 90, or you can steep. So, but you're going to have some amylase, or you're going to have to use some malted grains to um, bring out the starches and then start breaking up your starches and creating fermentable sugars with those starches. So it is a process, and we want to work with you, Alan, and keep asking questions. And after all these questions are asked, I'll jump back to you and go over a few things, maybe some things that you need to pick up. A lot of it you can get on Amazon or ordering it online. So um, definitely stick around. We'll get back to you and we'll go over a lot of things that you're going to need. Yeah, 5 to 15 is really a good solid. It gives you a good amount, and it's still something that you can move around if you had to. I'd hate to have a bunch of 53s and all of a sudden decide we're going to move to a different house and have to figure out how I'm going to get those out of the house onto a U-Haul and back into the next house. I mean, that's a lot of weight, a lot of risk, damaging that, losing all that liquor. Oh man, that'd be horrible. On your stripping runs, really, I think just running it hard throughout it, especially if it's a stripping run. Uh, Again, I take out heads and fours on my stripping run. A lot of people don't do that. They just strip it all off, put it in a big barrel, bucket or barrel or whatever, and then just once it's all stripped, then they do the low and slow thing. For me, once I get that acetone off there, I don't want it back, so I tend to pitch that. Even though you're going to run into more when you redo it, it's not going to be as concentrated. So if it's your only distillation, and it depends on what you're distilling. If you're doing a whiskey or brandy, sometimes faster is better because faster gets more water vapor coming off, and water vapor carries a lot of flavors, and those are flavors that you want. So if you're coming off the tap at 120, 130, that's a perfect proof for brandies and whiskeys and such. And it's something that you don't really have to cut down much before you go into the barrel. Now, if you want to lower and slower, you want a higher proof, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going low and slow. Um, in fact, I recommend it until you learn, what temperatures are best, because I think people tend to go too high, and you can't go too high and too fast. So that's a lot of times the reason we say go low and slow, because most people just want to fry it off there just as fast and hard as they can and get through it. And that's definitely not the best way. Have a good night, ha, brother. Take it easy, man. Come back Wednesday with more questions, brother, or ask in the group. They're there. Uh-oh. Lou Jr., I don't care for them. Uh-oh. Did I miss a question? Oh, never mind. One of those. Okay. Hey, Lisa. Got to run a run. Yeah, you got to run a runs. You get a significant flavor impact. And, it's a good question. I think a lot of it has to do with conversion. A lot of people use it because of its conversion power, but at the same time, wheat, just like a wheat, wheats generally convert as well or better than barley. So, malted wheats. So, but I would say for the flavor for sure. It's something that was done pretty much without corn until we came up with corn in the New World. Corn wasn't really a grain that was used in a lot of liquor making before, we came to the New World and met with the Indians, and they showed us all the corns and maize and stuff that they had, and all the muscadines and different fruits and vegetables that we'd never been exposed to. So prior to that, a lot of the liquors were made with just like a barley and, a wheat and a rye. So, a single malt was basically a barley. So, that was basically it. But I do like the flavor of barley, and I think it's used as much for flavor as for enzymatic power. I think, especially nowadays, there's still a lot of people using barley, and with the high temp liquid alpha and the glucose, you don't need it at all. But a lot of people are still keeping it in that grain bill for a reason, and it's just because it's got a good flavor. I did a banana mash. I was wondering if I can do it again. Would using amylase enzyme convert the starches? There are some starches in your banana, and you can excuse me, you can use the alpha and the glucose in that for sure. Um, I didn't when I did mine, because I really wasn't interested in much of the starch conversion, because it was just the sugars. And I added some brown sugar to get kind of a banana rum, which also added to some darker flavors that I was talking about earlier. So I got some of that from that. But I mean, you absolutely could absolutely. There's some significant starches in there that can be converted and used, and you definitely would cut down on the sugar needed. And absolutely, there are a lot of natural enzymes in the peels, but you definitely want to get the green parts out because those can be pretty bitter. Bring the water to around 120 or so and mixing up with the yellow label. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I look forward to. So 2.5 to 3 pounds per gallon of rice. I am gonna go 5. I'm not thinking 2.5 to 3. Now corn, I would definitely agree with you on the corn, but with rice, I'm gonna go a little higher. Let's go, Mr. Shadow. Yeah, definitely find out what the ones that make the rice whiskey and the beer and the sake. See what how many pounds of grain they're doing per gallon. I'm guessing I'm going to do 5 based on everything I've read so far. I think yeah, I think 5, and I can't believe I'm that far behind. What's going on, Callan? What's up, Mr. Shadow? Oh, that's different from Marine. What's going on, brother? I thought that was Mark Morgan, the Shadow. I'm getting way behind on these questions. I'm glad. Column still, pot still. 100% depends on what distillate you're wanting to make. For brandies and alcohol, absolutely 100% pot still. A lot of people argue with me, and there is a lot of whiskeys and bourbons made with huge fractional distillation, continuous column stills, but that's different. But for us, pot stills absolutely versus the smaller column still. The column stills tend to strip flavor, uh, and these have bubble plates in them, so it's different than the fractional boiling ones. Uh, yeah, column stills are generally better for higher proof, stripping more flavors off. Definitely what you want for vodkas and high proof rums and things of that nature. But for like flavor, yeah, pot still all the way. And there's nothing wrong with having a still that you can interchange the top on it. So you take the cap off and put a column on. So that's the beauty of it, of using sanitary ferrules. So you can just try clamp one on, take it off, and go a completely different direction with the same still. So you don't have to have two different shields. Thank you. I definitely need one. And I'm getting further behind while I take a shot. That'll be all right. Drink some of this Bloody Butcher Sour Mash Select from my buddy Jeff Singleton. Thank you, sir. Tasty. Very tasty. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the thalidomide and what was that paraquat they sprayed on weed, and yeah, denaturing alcohol with methanol. Yeah. Taking away ether from the cocaine producers. Not know, but they took away the ether from the cocaine producers, and so they just instead started using benzene instead. That really helped a lot, didn't it? Didn't slow the production down, actually increased production, made it cheaper, but it added an element now that we have to deal with of the cancer causing agent, which is benzene, which is basically a paint thinner. So, yeah, our government at work. About like spraying paraquat over weed fields that they knew that they would pick the weed and sell it anyway. And that's premeditated murder, but that's for a different show. Yeah, if I had to pick one or the other, I'd definitely go with the pot still, knowing that I could add a thumper, to get a higher proof if I needed, and infusers, to get more flavors. So yeah, for sure. If you had to pick one, But I like having a still with a ferrule on the top, that you can take that whiskey cap off and put a column on top of there, and get do it all, for a deflag and do it all. 20-gallon traditional all copper steel. The only thing I hate about it is that I want a bigger pot still. Yeah, that's the problem. Hey, at least you started out at 20, man. Imagine if you started out at 5. And it's like, man, I can't believe I spent all that money for a 5-gallon steel. And, wished I'd have saved it and bought a 20 or a 30. But 100-gallon. Well, need to talk to a Philbilly. He's got some stainless drums, 55s, that are pretty nice, and he's got some larger stainless vessels. And it ain't your all copper, but if you don't mind like having a stainless going into maybe copper plumbing and some copper mesh, they found that basically the reason people want to use copper is it's very easy to malleate, bend, shape, form into a steel. It's easy to solder. It's easy to make, and it's traditionally good because it removes sulfides. So, removing the sulfur from a lot of, using the right yeast and treating the yeast right, and cutting down on yeast stress helps cut down on a lot of these sulfur soldiers. But sometimes it's a product of the fermentation process, and sometimes it's just going to happen. And it'll surprise you because it'll be the same thing you did before, and I didn't get in. All of a sudden, I'm getting some. Why? And it's one of those unknown questions that may not be answered quite very easily. But so anytime you run into sulfides, it can taint the flavor of the distillate. So when you distill, if you have the copper, it bonds so sulfides bond to the copper. So um, they're bonding to it, which is one of the oxidation things that you have to clean off later. So all the sulfides are bonding to the copper, and it helps remove a lot of those. So if you get now you have to get the pure copper mesh. You don't want this steel that's copper plated like a lot of people are selling. But if you get pure copper mesh, you can put that in your vapor path, in your column, or in your whiskey head, or in your lint arm, wherever you want to put them, stuff them in there, and it'll help remove a lot of those sulfides. So it makes the necessitation of having copper, it's less necessary to have that copper pot if you can add that copper plumbing to the path afterwards, and especially if you add that mesh, because that gives a lot of surface area, and all those vapors are going through that mesh, so it helps literally scrubs a lot of those sulfides off. You gotta get up a feel bit. He's got some big stainless steel vessels that you may be interested in. Yep, absolutely, brother. That's right. That's what we do. Hey, and if you're doing it for money, brother, that's more power to you. Just don't tell everybody about it, or be legal. But can a column run a thumper? I've seen people do some crazy stuff, and I've seen people go through a column into a thumper. You absolutely can. Um, a little reduced, but some people might be using those thumpers too as an infuser, so they may have something flavor in there. So, but yeah, it's kind of silly. But people try different things. There's nothing wrong with it. Try, experiment, and do some crazy stuff. That's how innovations do. Researching getting your first deal. Awesome. Fat Boy Trent 20 from, I'm not sure whose website we're talking about. I must have missed something back here, but yeah, that's 20 gallons a good starting point. Absolutely. And the fat ones, I like the fat ones a little better. They're a little more efficient than the taller, skinnier ones. Yep. Yeah, I agree. 20 or 30 is a good starting point. I don't, a lot of people, I recommend the 13 and 18 Bever the stainless football if they just want to spend a couple $100 and get a good steel. Copper is going to be, considerably more expensive if you're not able to make it yourself, but it's worth it. You get more even heating, remove those sulfides. I'm definitely not knocking copper when I say what I say. It's definitely it's the best way to go. It's just the Cadillac of the steels, but it comes at a cost of price and maintenance. But definitely the best way to go if you got the money, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you just want to get your feet wet, man, you can start out with a keg steel. Sometimes you can get them for free. 35 bucks. I've seen them 35, 40, 50 bucks for just the steel. And then you gotta get on YouTube and find the proper way to get the cap off and to get the downcomer out in the shaft and the little ball valve on it that on the top. I will say don't stick a screwdriver in there while looking down at it unless you're ready to get your face washed and hair washed. But yeah, be careful. It's a lot of pressure in there, but release all the pressure, all the beer off, and you can pry. There's a wing ring in there that you got to pry that out first, and then once you get that, it'll pull out. But definitely depressurize it before you do all that. Clean it out, and I mean you can run it as just like it is there. Um, it's got a 2-inch sanitary ferrule on the top. It's got only one will be ridged, so it'll be flat on your gasket. It'll be flat on one side, ridged on the other. If you get a gasket that's ridged on both sides, it's going to leak. So Philbilly's got some flat gaskets, and the flat goes against the keg, and the ridge goes against the sanitary ferrule that you're clamping on top of it, whatever that may be, a column or a head. And Philbilly and a lot of other people have a lot of different um, uh, columns and heads and things that you can put on it. Man, it's just there's so many things with jar rigs and yeah, and it gets to be a lot of fun. But you can start out with a keg and then move up to like one of those football steels I was talking about. It's a nice stainless pot. It's got a good lid that you can take off and take everything apart and get inside and clean. You can't do that with a keg, but the kegs are more durable. And when a keg's sitting in the corner, it looks like a beer keg. It doesn't look like a moonshine steel. So if you don't have the column or the head on it, it just looks like a beer keg sitting there. So it's kind of, you know, just hidden in plain sight, I guess you could say. But uh, it's definitely a good starter. Just get you a turkey burner and a beer keg, and you can get started that way. Cheap, cheap, cheap. You could have a keg I mean, with the column and stuff, you could probably pick up a column for a couple hundred or so or less. So two, and have 35 into the keg, 235, and then whatever the turkey burner costs. Most people have those already. So for less than 250 bucks, you could be ready to go in that. Or for about the same money, you could get a little football bever and run that on your stove top. If your stove doesn't cycle hot cold when it's on 9 or high, it stays hot constantly. It'll be good. If your range cycles, don't use it. It's not going to work well for you. So, but you can also buy heating elements. They make stainless heating elements to go in the sides. You just have to find somebody to weld your little ferrule into the side of it. Put your heating element in there and buy the PID or whatever to adjust the electricity going into your element, and you can get it going. And there's several different methods of doing that too. So different types of electrical, but maybe we can do a little session or night on setting up for electrical, and what elements work best. I know that a lot of people get the stainless ones. Those tend to be really popular and what most people like best. North Carolina, but currently live in a high rise in LA. So I'm looking to have something for your balcony. Yeah, I mean you could do cake still and a turkey fryer on your balcony, or you could do the beverage on your stove in there. Most stoves, if you have a gas stove, that's awesome. Electrical stove, if you have the infrared ones that like a glass top and it's just red glowing underneath, you know, put your pot of boiling water on there, boil some water and turn it on high and see if it goes red and then goes off, red off. If it cycles like that, it's probably not going to be one that's good. But if you're boiling water and it stays red the whole time, it doesn't cycle on and off, and then I'll be perfectly fine to run your um, stovetop stills on. So, and those work fine too. Just got to be careful. If you're running inside, just promise me you'll have a little fire extinguisher handy to put out an alcohol rated fire extinguisher that'll put out a fire if you have one. Used stills, a lot of people are kind of funny about listing those because they don't want everybody to see, here's my still. Some places it's legal, so you'll find that. But you'll see a lot in the Facebook Marketplace. You can find them probably on eBay. Um, and there's a lot in our Facebook groups, but you just be careful when you're dealing with people, and always, unless you're dealing with somebody that's very reputable, that everybody in the group, and it has to be a good group too, because some of these groups are run by shysters who cheat people on steals. So join a reputable group and talk to the reputable builders there. And if you're looking for copper, it's expensive, but these guys can fix you up. They can hook you up. So 7-to-1 ratio, 7 gallons of wash or mash will be 1 gallon of liquor. Um, Generally speaking, it's close. 20%, I think, is a good number. It depends on what your mash is, and how what the alcohol ABV was going into the distiller before you into the still before you distill it. So that has a huge impact on what you're going to get off. But about 20%, 71, yeah, that's yeah. Yeah. It's best now. Once you do this for a while, you can definitely, you're definitely going to start noticing your difference in smells and feels and definitely tastes. But yeah, doing cuts is probably one of the most difficult things for a lot of people is figuring out um, the hard way. You're welcome, brother. I enjoy doing it. I hope I can help everybody out. Some of these questions, I might not have the answer to. I might have to hit the Google every once in a while because it's hard to keep up with a lot of things, especially how many pounds of this fruit. I've done so many, it's hard for me to remember that, or how many pounds of this grain versus this. I know around most grains and things are like 2.5 to 3 pounds, but I'm not sure if rice is going to be the same. Um, so I'm gonna try a little higher with the rice, but generally with grains, it's 2.5 to 3, as they were saying. But I'm gonna try a little higher, just based on what a lot of people are using to make the sake wines with. Those are pretty high proof wines. So yeah, I know some of these long winded answers. I try to make it to where when I answer the question, I know there's a lot of other questions that arise immediately when you're doing it. So I try to explain, all angles of it. That way it's easy to understand, and there's a lot of, if you do this, then this is, something else to consider. So there's a lot of if thens with a lot of answers too. So yep. What's going on, Earl? How's it going, brother? I can get a gallon off a 5 gallon max. Right. That's the 20% I was talking about. So you get 2 gallons for 10 gallons of mash, and that's about a 20%. That's a common number ish. It's like the 30, 40, 30 number I mentioned in cuts. It's not a concrete answer. It's an extreme generalization. But if you start out with a decent starting gravity and you get a good conversion, then you can estimate pretty much how much alcohol you can get off of it. And if you run it all the way out to the tails, of course you're going to get more alcohol. And if you take those tails and add it to your next run, you're going to increase that 20%. That 20% is going to go up. So there's a lot of factors that will change things. 165 proof is right, and proof is another, right, exactly. So if you got 160 proof coming off, you're probably not going to get the 2 gallons of that 160. But once it's proofed down to 100 or so, that's where you're going to get that 20 to 25% from. Exactly. Yeah, that's why I was trying to say. Also, the ABV of the mash. How much alcohol is actually in the mash to start with has a huge impact. I mean, it has everything to do with it. So, there's a lot of different things that come into play to how much you're going to get. And like I say, running it down into the tails, you got to include that too. And if you're running tails, then yeah, you're going to get a lot more. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just a 10%. Yeah, 20 ABV is 10%. So yeah, that's not out of the question for sure. Highest was 165. That's a good proof to come out. It's kind of borderline between getting high proof and less flavor or lower proof. So, there's nothing wrong with coming off at 165, but maybe think of ways to adjust that. I can make it a little bit lower and get a little bit more flavor, maybe come off at 140, 45 if I do this, and maybe eliminate that tall um, spool. Maybe if I go into my elbow a little closer to the steel with less tall of a spool coming off of it, maybe it'll do this. Maybe if I take that thumper out of line, I'll get a little bit lower. Maybe I don't need that much, um, but yeah, most of my, a lot of steels will come off of that if you don't really um, try to tinker with them to make them go higher or lower. But that's a good proof to come off, brother. Nothing wrong with that at all. Yeah, yeah. First gallon, you're going to get a little bit of your, heads and four shots in there, and those tend to be they're more volatile alcohol, so they're definitely seem to be a little higher proof, and then it drops off. Or like if you're using, like a column with a deflagmator on it, it's really interesting. So what you tend to try to do with a column with a deflagmator, you try to get all your fours and heads off first, and then you start turning the cold water onto your deflagmator and getting a lot of reflux. And when you do that, so you'll get a fairly constant 150. It depends on how you dial it in. I can dial mine in. I can get 120, 25, all the way up to about 180, 85, just by adjusting a few things on my steel or my deflagmator and the water temperature of the water going into it. So, um, yeah, you can definitely tune it, and but it gets to like 145 and 150, and it'll stay flat 150 the whole time, and boom, right when you get to tails, it drops off the shelf. It drops really quickly. So when you do that, you're kind of compressing the tails in it. But yeah, you'll see a really fast drop. What's going on, Marcel? What's going on, brother? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that's generally the way it goes, and it'll start. Sometimes it'll drop slower, and when you start seeing that drop, you're about to hit some tails, and then yeah, then you start smelling those tails, and then all right, here's my hearts. I know I'm starting into my tails here, and then if you want to, there's really no need to separate the small jars once you get into the tails because you've already made that cut. You know that my tails have started here. I don't need to use the rest of these 23 pint jars. Just maybe a bucket in there or something and just catch all the tails in it, and then move them, to the next run, or put them in your thumper, or move them into your still for the next run. And it'll increase, like Brian I talked about, it'll increase that percentage of alcohol that you get. So you'll get a lot more production and good taste and good ethanol off there if you do that. So I highly recommend it because a lot of people waste a lot of liquor in those tails for sure. Still holds 130, I'd say. Tails at about 3.5 quarts, about 100. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Generally, if you're running pot still mode and you don't have any columns, deflegmators, thumpers, and all that jazz on there, um, coming off 130 is perfect. Maybe 140 when you start out and you get, but if you can get your hearts coming through at 130, it's perfect. You can proof it down just a little bit with some sweet water and throw that right in a barrel, man, and at about 120, and you can get some really good flavors um, coming off at 130 for sure. But yeah, you'll notice it starting to drop off. It'll trail off 120, the next jar 110, 105, 100, 100, and then 90, and 90, and then 70. And that's when you see a quick drop around the 90 to 70, you're pretty much getting to the hearts. You can see the drips that you got coming off your worm, or the small trickle hitting the surface, and you can see it bead up sometime on there when it starts getting oily. But yeah, and just put your bucket underneath there and just run it on out. You don't have to babysit it as much. You can actually turn it up a little bit more and just work through those tails and get them off quicker. Just get it through it. And also, if you're doing a sour mash, you definitely want to get all the alcohol that you can out of that back set, because you don't want to be dumping off a lot of liquor into your mash. That can kill your yeast, and it kind of defeats the purpose. You don't have to. It's almost instant ready, because you just dumped 70 proof liquor in there. So run that down so your back set doesn't have a lot of alcohol in it, and it won't hurt your sour mash when you use it in the sour mash. Yes, I'm real, but don't tell anybody. I'm a Kentucky moonshiner. I know my accent. A lot of people guess West Virginia, Tennessee, or Kentucky. So I'm from Eastern Kentucky. That's where my hick accent comes from. What's going on, Dave? How's it going, brother? Good to see you on here this evening. Not a lot. Um, Most of the documentaries and stuff I watch, I like watching some of Alan Bishop's stuff that he puts out on YouTube. They do some recreating some of the distillations that were done, some absinthe from the turn of the century, from the 1800s and stuff. Him and Amanda and JJ and some other individuals, they go up to Mount Vernon, to probably one of the first distilleries in America, Mount Washington's distillery, and do a lot of work there. And they've done some recreations and some documentaries on that. And I really love watching that stuff, man. Alan does a good job on those, and some of the guys that he works with. Can't remember their names, but they get really into it, man. They dress up in period clothing and everything. It's cool as fuck. If you haven't seen it, you definitely got to look it up. Alan Bishop on YouTube, and check out some of his documentary work, and the people that also did worked with him, and he worked with. doing some of the absinthes and some of the other things, man. It's very, very interesting. It's a must watch. Yeah, limbics are nice. So I am that far behind. Damn. I guess I am. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it definitely cuts down some costs if you can deal with that stainless pot, which I like them because it's a lot less maintenance, easy to clean, and I see how nasty that damn. I mean, I've had a copper steel before, but just seeing how nasty that copper mesh gets, yeah, it's good to use. Definitely good. You need it. It's taking out a lot of impurities and sulfides for sure. It works very well. But you can clean those and reuse them and rinse them and reuse them and get quite a few uses out of them before they just turn completely green and hard to keep clean. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, and I'm sorry, brother, that I didn't get to you in time. Man, if there's a way that I could talk faster and y'all understand me and but it's I try to just take the questions as I can. I hate it that I didn't get a chance to take your time. And I hope you're still with us. If not, just stuck with me, damn it. I'll get to you. Don't leave. So hang in there. Maybe you'll learn something. That's some other questions in the same time. But if anybody knows them, or if you come back on here, somebody sees Nike or snack, um, maybe we can recommend those to him. Yeah. Bring copper and stainless steel. Copper naturally absorbs fusel oil. Stainless steel seems to disperse heat better. Yeah, actually, the copper holds the heat better and distributes it better, but the stainless heats much quicker. So, like boiling water, man, it's I don't like the turkey fryer jet burners per se. That have just like one focused burner in one spot. But man, those are so fucking great for boiling water on, man. I mean, just for boiling water and having one just for that, it's worth it because it's better than the banjo. The banjo spreads it out better, but they're not. I mean, I don't think they're as hot. I mean, they go by BTU, but from mine, what I've seen, those jet burners are great for getting your water boiling and getting everything ready, especially in a stainless pot because it's just so thin. Heat goes right through it, and they cool off quicker too, which is another good thing. But yeah, copper, which is why it's a lot of people prefer it in cooking and stuff, is because it heats so evenly. So yeah, that's a trade off too. Good point, Joseph. Yep, absolutely. I have two 10 gallons that are switched up Olympic style and thumper style, both pretty awesome. Um, Yeah, 10 gallons good. I like the 13 and the 18s. Those are because it makes it worth it. I would not recommend anything less than 10 unless just doing experiments. If you just want to do a small mash and experiment and doing different recipes, but it's just so hard to make cuts when you're that small and everything seems to smear a lot worse and it's really tough. It's really tough. With anything less than 10, it's tough to make cuts. That's why when you learn to make cuts with a small steel, and when you move to a big steel, you'll be like, holy shit, man, this is so much easier because it's like it's voluminous, and it's very tedious. You have to, use small jars and change them out. It's easier when you go bigger. So I definitely and you get something worth your time. You take all that time up to mix something, to measure it out right, to get the pH. If you're taking pH of a 5-gallon mash, it's the same as you're taking pH out of a 50-gallon mash. Except it's just more there. You're still dipping in the paper. You're taking the temperature, you're taking the gravity readings. As long as it's mixed up and you do it, it's the same process. You're just using a bit more grain, you're cooking more, but the cook times don't change. the size of the vessels that you're cooking in do. But, unless you have to cook several, um, sets before you can get it all cooked off. But bigger is definitely a little bit bigger makes it worth your while. If you're going to go through all the trouble, and I think anything less than 10, it's just really tough to make the cuts, and it just doesn't pay off for the time and the trouble. 10 to 30, anywhere in that range is great for hobbyists. Um, if you're a heavy drinker and you got a lot of buddies and y'all do a lot of drinking, maybe on up to a 40, 50 or 60, but just for yourself and just for the hobby, I think 20 to 30 is fine. Um, but again, if you're filling up barrels, you may be better served with something a little bigger. Yeah, tails will vary. You'll smell it. You'll smell that mustiness. And another thing about keeping the tails is once you get your tails down to like 10%, um, you start running into what's called sweet waters, and you'll get some interesting flavors that alone they taste kind of mute, and they're not very interesting. Just drinking it, it's kind of, ooh, why would he think that's good? But when you mix that with the distillate, that flavor carries over with the alcohol and stuff, and it makes some interesting flavors. And especially if you're going to age. So it's good to use those sweet waters for aging, which will give you some interesting oils to kind of estrify, and it's better than water. So it has some flavor in it, but it's not like a neutral water that has none. So when you proof with water, you're proofing with something that has no flavor. When you're proofing with some of those sweet waters, especially if you're going to age, you can bring some interesting flavors that may help you down the road. Uh, but that's what's called a sweet water. And when people refer to that, now you'll know what they're talking about. Thumper distilling, I really hate that a lot of these favorite steels came with thumpers, because thumper is an advanced addition to your steel. It's really for advanced distilling, and a lot of beginners are using it, and it's giving them some fits, especially the ones that they built on there. The way they built them definitely doesn't make it conductive either. So, but using a thumper is more of an advanced distilling technique. Uh, does the proof hold steady until the tail similar to the deflag style seals? Yeah. My Olympic has a pretty steady curve down. Does it? Interesting. Mine just running in pot still mode. It stays fairly constant. I'll get a little bit higher initially, and then it'll stay pretty constant. And then when I get to the tails, it'll start drip. So I get the kind of the angle down flat, and then angle down to nothing. And where those angles cut, those angles is of course making the cuts. But all steels will do a little different. I've never run an Olympic, so it's interesting that it's a steady curve all the way down. Cool. Awesome, brother. Hey, that's what we're here for, man. We're here to learn and have a good time, and I try to keep it clean. Every once in a while I'll say something off color, but I try to keep it. I'll cut up and make some jokes from time to time, but I try to keep it clean and fun. So run low and slow is all the time takes 8 to 10 hours for 20 gallons start to finish. Now, when you say finish, is that at the end of the tails or just getting into the tails? Because 8 to 10 hours sounds about right. For me, I get a drip. I'm running with my 18 and a half, which I generally run about 15 gallons in. I'll start dripping anywhere 45 minutes to an hour in. And once I start dripping, I cut it back a little bit. And I think till I start when I'm pretty well into my tails is about 4.5 ish hours, maybe close to 5. And then if I run it on down into the tails, it can add another 4 or 5 hours, man, because it's almost half of it's there, right? So yeah, I can easily get um, in pretty well into the tails where I'm moving my bucket, and I'm taking out the high tails, and just the tails on down. Yeah, it's about 4 more hours, 4 or 5 more hours. So it does take more time, and it does, but it's just and there's been times when I'm like, fuck it, I don't have time, I don't care. I'm not doing the sour mash. I'm dumping this shit after I'm done. Fuck it. I'm tired. I'm going to bed, and I'm not heating this back up tomorrow just to run tails. So this I'm cutting and dumping, and I've done that too. All of us do. It's not a business decision. If we had 1,000 gallons, yeah, if you're running that shit and this is your business, you're not going to pour hundreds of dollars down the drain. But when it's not much, yeah, it's pitch it, move on. In the beginning, it's full on heat, and then yeah, cut it back. Absolutely, yep, yep. That's the way to do it. Yeah, get it dripping, and then cut it back a little bit to the proper drip rate for your steel size and for what you're running also on your steel. But yeah, absolutely, brother. Sounds like you got it figured out, bro. Of course, you've been doing a little bit. You say what? You got 10 years in, did you say? Brian sounds like he's pretty knowledgeable. Citric acid, absolutely. If you run a lot, truth be told, um, you just rinse that sucker out and make sure that you get the film, the scum at the foam line, and get all that shit out of there, the 3M pad or something. But yeah, man, I mean, just rinse it out and run it again. The only time you really need to do citric acid is like if you start getting some of the copper oxidate building up, the what they call it, not a patina, but it's the oxidation of copper. It turns green. Anyway, so when it starts not filigree, but anyway, something like that. But when it starts to turning green, that's when you want to get a little bit something tougher with some acid or vinegar would work. But a lot of people used to use citric acid and um, hydrogen peroxide. They found that really is a bit much. So it's so acidic, you're starting to actually eat into some of the copper. And when you do that, it makes the surface of the copper kind of rough and more prone to oxidize in the future. So um, definitely don't leave any backset sitting in it when you're done. Open it up. Always never forget to open up your steel when you're done. Pop the top off. Make sure there's no vacuum or back pressure because it will implode on you as it cools. Definitely. Um, but once it cools down, get that back set out of there. And that stuff's very acidic. You don't want it sitting in that copper any longer than it has to. Turn that sucker upside down, spray it, get all that shit out of there. Get your arm in there and scrub along the liquid line. Your liquid line, like if you've got a 20-gallon steel and it's 20 gallons to where the cape starts, right where that cape starts, right in the bend there, you want to get that 3 impacts. There's a lot of scum that builds up in that foam because it always foams up inside there whether you know it or not. But just like boiling water, you can't even boil water without getting foam. You can imagine what a beer does. But yeah, just scrub that out and should be good. You don't have to use the citric acid every time, but if you are, that's awesome. Just keeping things clean. But the best way to keep it clean is just to keep it going. Keep using it, rinse it out, and use it again, man. Um, they will both. Usually stainless is the reason that is because stainless has a little more tensile strength in per gauge than what copper does. Copper is a lot easier to bend and more malleable, which is why it implodes easier, but they both will. But yeah, it's a lot harder to implode a cake steel than it's going to be a 16 ounce 10-gallon steel or whatever. You get the 20 ounce, start getting a little thicker, the heavier gauge, the harder it's going to be. But just open it up every time. I'll tell you, man, I don't have a lot of trouble getting rid of the alcohol for some reason. I've got thirsty friends, man. We stay pretty thirsty. Yeah, check out the Sweetwater for sure. It's definitely good for aging. If it's something that you're gonna age, it's what I use when I proof down to age. My brandies and my whiskeys. Yeah, that's interesting, man. I've not done the Olympics, and that's one still I've not had is an Olympic still. I love the looks of them though, and I know that's probably old world and one of the first designs, so I love the looks of them. I love the art, art that goes into making them. 8 hours is it's I mean, I've seen a lot of people, going, well, we preach low and slow in the groups, and every once in a while there's somebody that doesn't quite understand, and they come back and they're like, man, I did the low and slow, and but I'm or people that go by temperatures or say, when it gets to this temperature, cut it back and let it sit because they've read somewhere that alcohol boils at 173.1. So they understand that ethanol does, but that's when you run into a lot of people that they say are Google knowledgeable. They Google knowledge and they have never really practically done it. I've had people argue me up and down about it, and I'm like, okay, well, let's just do it. And I teach them about azeotropes and how the boiling points change once you mix different azeotropic uh, things together, compounds together. So the boiling point of water goes down and the boiling point of alcohols go up when you mix them together. So, I teach them about azeotropes, then they learn it and they're like, oh, but they think that 175-degree pot temperature and all of a sudden you've got methanol just pouring off there, and that's just not the case. It's not the way it happens. 13 gallon. Yeah. I'm dripping in an hour. I'm usually close to being done with my tails at about 4 to 5. And then if I run my tails on out, it's gonna be another few hours. So yeah, yeah, 8 to 10 hours for a complete run, and even in larger steels, what's strange is you scale up in steels, but a lot of the times don't scale up as proportionally. So you would think if if a 20-gallon steel cooks off in 8 hours, then it's going to take 16 hours for 40. It's just not that's not how it works. Um, so I guess there's a some kind of graph that we could make that would show the reduced time as you get larger. But yeah, it's not going to take quite as long for a larger steel. Yep, yep. That's about exactly mine. Now if you're running like it, and it depends too. I mean, there's some people that are running elements and they've got like 10,000 watts of elements in their steel and they're cranking this shit out quick, man. I mean, they're running it quick. It's a lot quicker. So, I mean, there's ways to get it out of there quicker without scorching it or ruining it. I've never done the electric yet. Um, I definitely intend to. It's just something that I've always done either a normal regular wood fire, how I started, and then propane, which I used for most of my years. And then once I started playing with these little Weber steels, I started using the kitchen, the stove, the flat top stove, and I enjoy all of them. The wood probably the least, is because the amount of work involved and setting it up, and everybody sees the smoke and smells it, and it's fun for nostalgic, But um, propane, pretty much, you can drag those tanks anywhere, do it anywhere, and that's generally becomes the king of the distilling world. But electricity, if you can run a cable to it, man, electric is a lot less expensive than your gas, and I would say as or more efficient. So these guys with these big stills running, two or three 3,500 watt elements, or two 5,500 watt elements, man, they're cranking this shit out quick, man. And I'm like, it's got to taste different. It's got to be scorched. It's got to be something. I tried it, man, and it's like good fucking liquor, man. I'm not tasting the scorch. I'm not, but I have seen some, some horror stories about some, elements that. Let's see if I can find one of these. Let's see. That didn't look too good. I think I saw one the other day. Um, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, you don't want to see this on your stainless element. All right, this is just buildup of stuff that's breaking off. You can see, and I'm assuming that's what this is, and this isn't just one of those elements that has that. This is the outer part of the element, but I'm assuming this is stuff that is caked on and is now chipping off. That's at least the way it was described. So yeah, look at that shit, man. It's horrible. And that looks like the bottom of a fryer, but look at the rust, man. Wait a minute. I've never noticed this. Is this copper? Yeah, it's copper. That's not rust. Tell me. Yeah, it's gotta be just copper. Yeah, that's gotta be scorchy tasting. You think that would affect it would, affect the flavor. I don't know. But I'm gonna definitely try some elements and to see. Yeah, yeah, it'll get a little bit of green in it. Yep, yep. And you can use you can also use vinegar. I don't like using a lot of vinegar. I don't like keeping those acetobacters and all that acetic acid, around my stuff. I know it's part of the fermentation process, but I do a lot of wine, so I don't like I don't like having a lot of vinegar around my stuff. But I use citric acid as well. 13, yeah. If you run it all the way down to the sweet waters, it's easy to do. Run it good and slow, low and slow. I think mine drips at 45 to an hour, and I guess I'm about done with my hearts and tails, getting into the tails at about 4 to 5 hours in. And I guess it takes at least another 4, sometimes 5. So I could be 10, 10 or 11 hours in the mine just as well. So yeah, getting all the tails out. But I just do that when I'm sour mashing. I don't do it for all my brandies and everything. I don't really keep the back set for my brandy for anything, so those get dumped, but I will run it down and I will rerun the tails and just about everything. I'll keep a bucket of tails and also collect some of the sweet waters, and I'll save what I don't use to proof down so I can use it for something else later. I got a bunch of jars of just sweet water in there. Yeah, that's what I was saying. At bigger steels doesn't mean that it's going to take a lot longer. So then there you go again. It's more efficient, to have the larger steels, and you're getting better production, and it's just all around definitely a little bit better way to do it. I think for sure. Second here. saw somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, on the militia page, if you want to go on there and check it out, there's a guy who labels his jars, and you can see how his proof changes from the 170s down to 100. So pretty interesting to look at all his jars there, because he has probably 3 gallons worth, 4 gallons, maybe 4 gallons of jars. I can't tell if those are quarts or pints, but I think somebody asked. Yeah, that's interesting. But for those that haven't joined us, definitely join it. Get in the Moonshine Militia, man. We got lots of information in there. I'm adding more to the files all the time. If there's a specific recipe that you're interested in seeing, I've got a shit load of recipes, man. But I'm trying to go through them. I'm trying to weed out the bullshit from the good. I like the recipes that kind of give you a how to, but at the same time, some of those how tos aren't so good. So I'm gonna cut some of that shit out if it's what I consider not a really good practice. Um, Getting back to that though, a lot of people will say, "Oh, but you can do it this way." And, it's yeah, you can, and there's a lot of ways to do things for sure, and there's a lot of ways to arrive at a decent drip. So a lot of people say, "Well, I don't know about you, but I do it this way and it tastes pretty good," and that's fine, and it does. It's like, but you could have cut a lot of those steps out and gotten the same flavor at the same time, or you could have saved yourself some time, or you know that's just another a way of doing it. There's a lot of opinions out there, and there's many ways to arrive at that same drip. So um, a lot of times we're not necessarily dealing in facts as much as this is what I've found, or this is the practice, or generally, there's always an okay, or a bad, an okay, an average, a good, and a very good, and it's just subjective to where things lie in that. So there's always good, better, and best ways to do certain things. Am I going to tell somebody that's using the good way that they have to do it the better way? No. I mean, if the good way is the way they're doing it, they're happy with it, and they're getting a good product from it, more power to you, brother. I mean, there's a lot of people that are kind of set in their ways. A lot of old moonshiners, especially, are set in their ways, man. You're not going to get them to change. And why should they? They've perfected it. They've done it this way for 40 years, and it's always tasted good. By God, they're going to use that same recipe and that same methodology, and why knock that? But then you ask them, well, how does your brandy? Well, I don't do brandy. Well, how about your runs? I don't do runs. I make corn liquor. I've done it the same way for 40 years, and I make the best corn liquor, and they probably fucking do. They've probably done it so many times. They've got it down to a science. But don't mention that word around. But you learn different methods for different things, and it doesn't hurt to learn something new. If you can make it more efficient, save you some time or money, that's what we're here for. So if someone made a 50-gallon mash and used a 13-gallon still, they would be stilling all day long. Yeah, or there's nothing that says, Steve, that you have to do it that day or the next day or that week. That mash will keep just like wine. As long as you keep the critters out of it, and the cetobacters and the fruit flies and everything out of it, and keep it clean. If you're going to be taking a little longer, and you can pull some of that cap off of it and dump it, and preserve it and make it last a little longer. I mean, hell, Tom, he's had grain mashes sit, all fall into the damn spring in his barn and run it in the spring. Swear it's some of the best shit he's ever made. So, you don't necessarily have to run it fast. It's just more efficient to make a larger mash like that while you're doing it. If you have the equipment large enough to boil that much or cook that much or whatever it wants. But yeah, it's a lot more efficient to do larger and then just distill it off at your leisure. Same with wines. You know, you can keep those wines as long as you want and keep them in that airlock. I've got some in there that sat for months that need to make me some blackberry brandy. I think it's blackberry. It's blackberry blueberry one. I can't even remember. It's been so damn long. But yeah, I'm seeing fruit flies. There's my nemesis. I hate them damn things. But once you do fruits, yeah, you'll have fruit flies. Like to hear about wines, even though it's not distilling. Well, you can for brandy, but I like wine also. Actually, you know, a lot of my brandies don't ever make it to a brandy. You know, it's just when I make it and I taste that damn mash, and it's like, holy shit, that's good. You know, it's like I'm not distilling that. You know, it's damn good the way it is. I'm gonna add a little potassium sorbate to that, or I'm actually getting away from using sorbate for the flavors, all flavors. But potassium metabisulfate, put that in there to kill the yeast off, or some people pasteurize it if you want to heat it up. I ain't fooling with all that shit. Put a little potassium metabisulfate in there, let it gas off, and then bottle that shit up, man. And I've got a lot of wine in there. I've got a lot of wine. I like drinking wine, man. I drink more wine now than I ever have, man. I've become a wino, I guess. Wino. I love it. It's so much flavor, but it's it's not something you want to get drunk on because those are some pretty major fucking hangovers. Those wine hangovers. If you get hammered on wine, you drink a couple bottles, you're gonna feel that shit. It's just with wine, all those congeners are in there. All that methanol is in there. All the acetone, all that. It's all in there. All that shit doesn't get created when you boil it and start distilling it. None of that gets created. It's already in there. So when you're drinking wine, and this goes back to the person who's talking about blindness, this is just a part of it. If that was the case, then wine could make you go blind because you're not even distilling off the methanol out of the wine. So you might have to, you know, concentrate it in one way or the other. But like, man, those wine, love the taste of it. But man, the hangovers are one of the worst, and that's why, because you got a lot of those conjures, you got a lot of, you know, uh, methanol, acetone, methyl acetate, ethyl acetate, propanols, a lot of shit in there that you really don't want. But yeah, I love what paste I add oatmeal. Oh, for pasting a steel. Actually, I think the rye paste is probably one of the best pastes to use. It's been a long time since I pasted a steel, my friend. It's probably in the 80s, early 80s that I pasted, had a steel with a cap that I pasted. It was before my keg steel. So yeah, it's been a long time since I pasted a cap, but I think we just used oatmeal, or I mean uh, cornmeal. Back then, I think we might have added some flour to it or something, but it we didn't. I've later learned that rye makes a really good paste. Um, but at this point, if you can go to a tri clamp setup and have a ferrule welded onto your steel and onto your cap, I highly recommend it. It's so much easier. It's not as nostalgic, and it's not. You lose some cool factor, but yeah, I use oatmeal. I use oats a lot in my grain mashes, my grain meals. So I like using a lot of oats, but yeah, I think rye makes the best paste. But yeah, it's been a long time since I pasted anything. Could you get a ferrule on that? I mean, what size is it? Might be able to neck it down a little bit. Um, yeah, it's I guess if it were outside in the heat, uncovered, and you had, a lot of cap floating on the top, and shit, flies and everything getting into it, planting maggots in it and stuff, you probably could. But if you keep it covered, and not necessarily under an airlock, but keep it covered with just a vent hole that's got, screen or something to prevent critters, bugs, and flies from getting in on it, it'll last a while. Your brandies will last a long time, years. Now the fruit, grape will be good for a long, long, long time. Some of the fruits, excuse me, yeah, tired, man, long day. Some of the fruits and stuff, though, they don't keep like grapes. They don't hold flavor as well in a wine like a grape will. So some fruits, a year in secondary is about the max. So you don't want to go any longer and start bottling it up. And after that, you definitely want to have it drank within a year or two. So not all fruits, age like a good grape wine will. So everything does go bad though. So but yeah, it's one of the beautiful things about this is if you have time, you can be as lazy and you can put shit off if you're a procrastinator. This is an excellent hobby because you can put it off and really not hurt things that much. Um, might be going beyond some of the best times to run, but you can still run it. And like Tom, I mean, it's sat in there for many, many months in that barrel, in a plastic barrel, and he ran it. It's one of the best ones he's had. So, yeah, time. Um, if you got it covered properly, yeah, it's not a big issue, especially if we're talking a week or a few. That's the extreme. So, if you can make that larger mash and just, pick, I can run Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and I can get my 3 runs in and be done. Yeah, it's not a problem, man. That's actually the way you want to do it. Tinctures. Wow, Lyme disease, man. Yeah, that can be bad, brother. Need to talk to Lisa and them. I think Mark Morgan and Lisa or have a show on that they talk about tinctures and they get into some of that stuff. I'm not as knowledgeable on it, and tinctures and stuff. But Lisa's very knowledgeable, and I think they have some discussions on that. I'm not sure what day they run it. Might be Monday. I hate saying that and being wrong, but look on Morgan's Moonshine, and I think he shares it to the militia too when they do it. So check the militia page or Morgan Moonshine page. But he and Lisa get together. Lisa, I don't know if she's still in here with us or not. She may be able to correct me. May not be listening, but yeah, they do. They start getting into the tinctures and stuff. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say they don't make the cuts like they say, and I know that I don't know about methanol. Well, there's methanol in most all of it. To be honest with you, Steve, because we found that everything doesn't cook off because of the azeotrope. So in fractional distillation, a lot of the commercial products get fractionally distilled. So they have probably better methods of separating methanol from production than what we do. They've got what's called a fractional distillation column, and it's basically a real tall column, and there's alcohol in there in a constant flux. And the higher volatile alcohols make their way to the very top, and the lowest volatile alcohols make their way to the bottom. And out of each of these, it holds them for a period, and it just lets them um, maintaining this flux, and it comes off at each of these levels of the distillation, fractional distillation column, fractionally distilled into different grades, much like the way gasoline and diesel and regular oil, and I'm trying to think of the highest gas. What's higher than gas on that's coming out of a refinery? Um, I can't think what it's called, but that's the way it comes off those steels. So it sometimes they have less methanol in them, depending on the type of system that you're using. But they certainly do have a lot more ethyl acetates, and they're not as strict on their cuts. And a lot of them depend on that barrel to help hide a lot of that. So when they age it, so they cheat, and they don't care about being a bottom shelf or mid shelf. Um, they just care about that dollar, and it certainly shows in their product. Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah, we was talking about that Rick Simpson oil up there. I know what you're talking about. Oh, Santa knows about these things. But yeah, alcohol, I love it when people talk, Brian, I love it when people talk about, yeah, man, that's you drinking that toxic stuff with that ethyl acetate and acetone and all. And it's like, man, or you're using that brass fitting. You know that brass fitting is going to give you lead poison and kill you, and it's toxic. And I'm like, bro, by today's standard, there's less lead in a brass fitting than you're going to get out of one serving of fucking tuna. If you eat a big old tuna that's old, that's lived for a long time, man, they got more mercury and lead and toxic metals in that damn fish than you'll get out of your brass fitting. And I guess you don't brush your teeth and drink out of the faucet because they have brass fittings, and chances are it's an older brass fitting that has higher lead content than the modern ones. So um, yeah, it's always funny to listen to some of these people talk about some of these things. They don't know as much about as they should, but yeah, a little bit of brass. A lot of times, brass between copper and steel, helps prevent a lot of galvanic, action that can break down your metals. So, yeah, it's in your pipes, it's in your plumbing, your fixtures and faucets are made a lot of times with a plated brass, and you get a lot of brass. It's not as bad as it used to be. Now, yeah, if you're talking about brass from something from the 30s or 40s or 50s, yeah, it's probably got a little bit of heavy metals in it for sure. But yeah, alcohol is always toxic, but it's the level of toxins that you get. So you can just drink a little sip and you're not getting much toxins in you. It's still toxic, and it's as toxic as the rest of the alcohol that you drink. Is just the amount of toxins that you're introducing into your body. So, all alcohol is toxic though, and a certain amount will kill you, just like baby aspirins. Those are toxic. You take too many and it'll kill you. There's a lot of medicines that are toxic that you take too much, it'll kill you. Pretty much most anything out there, too much of it, it'll kill you. Water, too much water will kill you. So there's a lot of things that too much of can be a bad thing. But yeah, there's certain healing properties. A lot of people say just a little drink every once in a while. Like you were talking about, rinsing out your mouth and cleaning out the bacteria in your mouth. It'll kill them, but at the same time, there might be some good bacteria that are getting killed at the same time. So I'm not, I don't know. I'm not a bacteriologist, and I'm not really up on all that. But I've heard the arguments from both sides, and I know enough to not get in that argument. Yeah, I enjoy working with my ferals. Yeah, yeah. Try rye paste. Definitely, you'll like it. Of course, it's hard to clean off now. You'll probably be cussing me when it's when you have to soak it and you get it off there. But yeah, it'll paste up pretty well for you for sure, brother. Just don't cuss me when it comes time to clean. But yeah, Brian, you never did say what how big of a cap do you have at the top of your still that you're pasting, and if we could get you into a ferrule with a tri clamp and gasket that goes in them, you don't have to use a silicone. They make um, it's made of a PTFE plastic, and it's inert, totally inert to all the alcohols and stuff, and it's definitely the way to go. Definitely the way to go for sure. Teflon, yeah, I suppose PTFE is Teflon, so it's a plastic, and it's pretty neutral to all the alcohols and all the esters and all the higher and lower alcohols that come off. Silicone has some issues with certain ones. I think the ethyl acetate and a few others don't. I mean, don't get me wrong, it still works well, silicone, but like with the plastic Teflon, probably the most heavy duty, longevity wise, will last a lot longer. The silicones are, of course, giving. Like we were talking about the keg earlier, I would definitely use a silicone on that because it's got the give, and it seals that flat better than that plastic Teflon will. But so for your kegs, remember one side's ridged and one side's flat. You definitely want to use that gasket. Hillbilly has them, and it's definitely the way you have to go on your keg stills. So, wow, 16 raspberry species. Man, I'm fucking. Am I getting green? Look at this. I'm see this coloration. I'm getting green over here. Freaking envy. And I'd love to have some land with a big bunch of fruit trees on it, grow of different types of fruits and everything. Yeah, I was thinking this on Monday, Chris. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They have a lot of uses for the methanol. They use it to denature alcohol with, to poison people with. We were talking about that earlier, but yeah, methanol. They've got a lot of different things that they use it for sure. Yeah, those columns. That's cheap for one of those columns. It's probably a rectification system that he had at that price. A lot of these fractional distillation columns, they're like hundreds of thousands, but you can use rectification systems that basically vent off what's at the top, and those work really well too. Hello, Mama B. What's up, Mama B? And Jason. I'm guessing it's Mama B because Jason doesn't say hey loves. At least not in the open. Okay. He might send me private messages that says that. I'm just kidding with Jason. They're awesome people if you don't know them. Love me some Mama B and Jason. Some of my peeps. 4 inch. That'd be perfect, man. If you can get you a 4 inch ferrule to solder into that, um, man, you'll be so glad you did. It's so much easier. And when you get done with the run, instead of just pop the top off, man, you can put a glove on, take that tri clamp off, and just lift the head up, and you know, be done. Of course, one of the best things you can do with the copper steel is just put a simple, you know, 3/4 inch, 5/8 inch valve. And that way, when you're done running it, just open the valve up, let air into the top of the steel, and you'll never have to worry about implosion. So, no, you don't have to drill any holes. This is a ferrule. It's basically just a ring, and then it has like a larger ring on that. So you just solder that in, and then there's a gasket that goes on that, and then on your cap, you'll weld a ferrule to that, and then there'll be just a little gasket that goes in between, and your tri clamp will just fit on that and tightens up, and it seals it. You'll never have to paste and clean again, man. But yeah, just stainless. You can braze it, you can solder it. There's many ways to get around there, but definitely the way to go for sure. It'll save you a lot of time and trouble in the long run. You definitely be glad you did. And we got a lot of guys that can do that for you if you don't have the ability to solder and weld. You can take it by somebody. I know we know a lot of builders from all over the states, pretty much, especially the southeast. If you've got anybody from Ohio to Florida, from the Carolinas all the way over to Texas, we got you covered, bro. Yeah, I like smoking out of glass for sure. Playing some pool, huh? Yeah, I used to be a pool shark. Actually, back in the old days, it was called a pool sharp, SHARP, like the out sharp's rifle. And over the years, it became shark because of the way they um, played and tried to manipulate and get money out of people. So it went from sharp to shark, and that was probably in the 40s and 50s when it kind of changed. Interesting, and how names changed, but yeah. So who do I need to play, Jason or Tanya? 'Cause I used to play a lot of tournaments. I mean, I don't have no high end Mucci stick. That's a pretty nice one. From a company made in Georgia. Well, if you're close to North Georgia, man, you can take it by, and they don't care if you bought it from them or not. They'll do the work for you, and they do good work. And I know they're busy, so you might have a little bit of waiting time. But if you're willing to wait, they can get to you. If not, we got a lot of people that we could recommend that are not maybe not as close by, but might not be so busy. But North Georgia, Andrew and those guys definitely take care of you. Warnicki's great people. They ain't gonna cheat you. They ain't gonna rob you. They ain't gonna keep you still and act like, "What? You never brought me nothing." No, they're good people. So that's important, being able to trust somebody. But they can slap you a four on there pretty quick if it's going to be right size. That might have to be necked up or down a little bit, but they can take care of you. Hey, right there you go. We were talking about a good yeast for those four shots and that methanol. Cleaning that glass, man, is they're good for that. Found that out over the years. Of course, I was cleaning a friend's glass pipe out. I never, yeah, friends. That's awesome. Yeah, we was talking about this before. Stark Brothers is the way to go, man. Stark Brothers. My grandpa loves Stark Brothers. Yeah, I could definitely use some of those raspberry, man. That makes some good wine, bro. And brandy. That's awesome. Yeah, if anybody can. Now you may be threading. You won't have to deal with any threading. You don't have threading on your steel now, right? I mean, it's just pretty much a straight cap. fitting in, and you just paste up, because the ferrules that I'm talking about don't have threading on them, so they're just solid. So they'll either fit inside or outside the copper. And if there's a gap, a lot of that can be made up with some filler metal, of course, and solder. If it's too big of a gap, they can, stretch it and make it fit better and tighter. And then they're just going to sweat it on there, is with some. They use a special type of flux that works real well with stainless to copper. Trying to think of the name of it. Oh, it's damn old and stupid. I'm getting where I can't remember things anymore. But ruby, I'm thinking. Now I'm thinking of ruby flux. They use a lot of that to weld the copper to the stainless, or braze it, or solder it. But yeah, it definitely saves you some time for sure. And if you're good at soldering and you get the 4-inch ferrules and it fits really snugly, yeah, I mean, you can get, and you don't have to use that special flux. It just makes it so much easier. But I've seen these guys that are pros, like Wayne at Ozark and stuff. They don't need all that fancy shit. And they can just use regular and make it look beautiful, seamless, and awesome. But that's what they do. And if you're fairly close to Ozark Steels, he could help you too with that. And I mean, it's just his work, man. It just, you wouldn't be able to. It just blends from silver to copper. You don't even hardly see no ridges or lines or anything. It's beautiful work. He does really good work. But yeah, it would make it so much easier on you, for sure. All right, Fields Creeks. John on, brother. Glad you joined us tonight. We'll be back on Wednesday for sure. And it is getting about that time, isn't it? Damn, he knew. It's getting about 11. It's going to try to wrap everything up. I'm going to scroll through these pictures. Jason won. Mama B won. Well, did y'all get a pool table? Sent me a message. Cool, brother. Let me see here. All right. Did you send it to me or Phil Billy? Because if you send it YouTube, that's going to Phil Billy. Yeah, I don't see it in Facebook. So I'm not getting it, brother. Make sure I get it, though. Or maybe he's talking with somebody else about sending them a mess of, maybe it was a mess of some of these raspberries that you should have been sending me as well. Yeah, I used to play a lot of billiards, man. I used to play tournaments. Mama B has had a table in her life for years. Yeah, I grew up with one in my basement. That's how I learned how to play. We had dartboard and a pool table in the basement. It's old Steepleton. Actually, I've got it. It's just disassembled, the same one. An old Steepleton from the 40s. It's beautiful. But I got to get it put together. Just another project for me. Yeah, Stock Brothers is the best, man. They do great. They back their work up and they guarantee everything. All right, brother. Glad you tuned in, and yeah, we'll be back Wednesday. So read on up about that and let us know what you find, and I'll do the same. And we definitely, if you want to join the militia, if you're not in there already, join us and bring it up, and we can discuss a little bit more openly there. It's a private group setting, and talk about different builders and that might be close to you, that might be not as busy as North Georgia, that can get to you. But yeah, we got a lot of people in our network, bro. Used to be a guy in Ohio named Toby who made steels that had serial numbers. And yeah, yeah, it's probably more commercialized when they add the serial numbers. There's been some decent ones out there. I mean, some really good steel builders from back in the day, that not around much anymore. Some of them are still around. Some of them are still building the old cap and paste type, like old Stampede. But man, we got some people that are doing some really high end work, that making some Cadillacs beautiful with portals, big huge portals that you can see in, 50-gallon stills with nice big portals you can watch everything happen in, and just beautiful work, man. I wish I was rich. I'd definitely invest in one of those, man. They're works of art, man. I mean, it's just I don't know if I'd probably still use my old stills because I don't want to get them all messed up because they're just too damn pretty, man. It's like that wall hanging rifle that's worth so much and so beautiful. How often you hunt with that? You ain't. Okay, brother. All right, brother. Love you, man. Hope you're getting to feel better. Take care, Dave. And everybody, thanks for tuning in. I guess it's getting about that time. So thanks for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that laugh button, hit that mad button. If you're mad at me, some of these guys might be mad at me. I didn't get the questions asked. I hope the Nike dude comes back so I can answer his for him. But some interesting comments. It's always fun. We get our friends from YouTube that always bring us some entertainment in. It's kind of funny to look at. Some I won't paste. I'll see, and I won't necessarily. I'm not ignoring you, but I don't want to call attention to it because Facebook and YouTube are kind of sensitive towards any kind of political and hate speech, and I don't like getting political. I don't like talking about any of that stuff on here. Jewish versus not Jewish, Muslim versus Christian. I have my opinions on all that. And if you want to catch me in a different setting, I'll be happy to talk about it. But when it comes to here, man, I like to keep it pretty much just alcohol related and helping everybody because I'm sure Muslims enjoy their drink and Jews and non-Jews enjoy their drink just the same. So we're all brothers when it comes down to it. So we're brothers till we're brothers in arms, and then when we see each other on the battlefield, I guess it's a different story. But until then, we'll just try to keep it civil and fun. And I kind of bypass a lot of those. I do see them, and some of them I get a kick out of reading. Some of them it's entertaining. It's fun, and YouTube never fails. I mean, had quite a few. But yeah, we like to drink. Hell yeah, bro. Yeah. And we talked about doing, a kind of a political uh stream. Yeah, I drink a lot. Sometimes. Yeah, we were talking about doing a political stream and getting into all that. Damon and I did. We're still pushing the thought around. I don't want to stigmatize myself at the same time because it used to we could talk about certain things and people disagree, go on and still be your buddy and your friend and stuff. But this day and time, man, it's like people can't disagree without taking it to where, they want to choke each other out. So I try to yeah, I'll send you something, Dave. You talking to me, Dave, or somebody else? It better be me. If it's not always mad. I heard somebody else got something for me. I'm all about hurt. I'm just kidding you, brother. Yeah, I'll send you something. Yeah, I don't, Steve. We were talking about it, and I don't want some of my viewers to get on there and say, "Well, damn, I thought this guy was smart, and here he is saying this or that," or people get, I don't want to stigmatize myself, and get people, liking me or hate me. I guess I try to limit a lot of my Facebook posts too. I probably shouldn't, but I don't want to offend anybody. But if they ask me questions, in real life or on Facebook, Be prepared for an honest answer, because I'll damn sure give you an honest answer. I'll tell you what I think. That's one thing I'll do, brother. So y'all have a great night and have a great weekend, what's left of it. And I guess we'll see y'all back in here same time, same bat channel on Wednesday. And we'll try to come up with some interesting topics to talk about in our off time when we don't have some questions. We'll maybe get back to helping this guy earlier that I promised that I would about getting started. I hope he joins militia, but we do want to help you get started, and we want to talk to you about some amylase, some enzymes that you're going to have, and a type of steel, what type of steel you're going to get, and things you're going to need to have along with that. And we'll talk about cooking grains and different temperatures for different grains, and how not to denature the enzymes and your malts and things like that. And we'll pull up a chart, and I'll share charts with you so we can not denature the enzymes that we heavily depend on to break down these starches into fermentable sugars. So maybe we'll get into some of that, more steps in the process and things of that nature. So be thinking about that and coming up with some questions if you have any about that. And we'll see you guys and gals, Mama B and Lisa and whoever else is watching out there that haven't flirted with me yet. You should have already. Be ashamed if you haven't. But we'll see y'all on Wednesday. Shine on.